Wholeness and balanced vibrations to everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Astro Quest. My name is James Evans Bomar III. I'm the developer of the Planetary Resistance and definitely the host of Astro Quest. And today, wow, people think that, I just bring this message, but I'm so into the message. Like, the message to me has to be authentic. It has to be authenticated. It has to match up with everything that we're experiencing in the reality in real time. Just what I've received from scrutinizing everything and then allowing myself to absorb what I've estranged from all of the crap that's been going on in this particular reality. And I'll just say it like it is, like there's a lot of a byproduct here on this planet. Like you can see that obviously the plastic is a major byproduct, but there's also a fecal byproduct that comes from pretty much every being that lives here. It exudes from their orifices. So as you see with your nose, you have snot. With your pores, you have tears. You have several ducts that excrete certain things from your body. So it starts to really connect as you see exactly what's going on here on the planet and all of the different things that are involved. What I will say definitely about this show today is that I'm really going to be talking about certain things, specific things. But before we start, I just want to let everyone know that this is vast. No one knows the entire thing, but there are some things that we do know about, meaning that there are certain happenings and situations and circumstances that have taken place on the planet and also in this immediate solar system, or what we're perceiving to be a solar system, that we do know what's going on. It's just now we're living in a time where I won't even say we're remembering. What's happening is other people are telling us. Some people say within these New Age movements, we're supposed to come into this grand remembering of all of what we were. Well, realistically, unless you make that happen, then you're not going to really be benefiting off of that. But what you can benefit off of is if someone is breached into high levels of information and knowledge, and you start putting the pieces together and then start figuring out how you're going to guide yourself through this huge ocean of space, an immense organic substance itself that you're in, you're definitely in the right area if you want to be up to the task, meaning that this is definitely a quest. What I've been really, really looking deeply into here on Earth is all of the arrangements that have been taking place, just in asking the question of why am I here? I have to ask myself then why is my mother here, and then why is my ancestors, why were they here? But more than anything, you'll just start looking at everyone around you and getting more of an extrospection, meaning you're looking out at people and you're seeing how many different kind of humans there are, and you're wondering, well, how did, what's their story? Like, how did they get here? So today I'm going to deliver the answer to that question. And it's a big question because it's actually the question where people ask, well, what makes us different? Why are we different? Why is someone born with impediments like no arms and things, while others are born with arms and don't have to go through the difficulties that they go through because we're in a world that wants you to have all your arms? So you see, those questions are what people run away from answering. Like all the big names, they don't want to get caught up in answering those questions because, first of all, if you don't know the answers to them, you're going to be speculating. And then, based on what you say, people will judge you. So what this is called is no man's land. It's basically the place where no man or woman wants to go, which is acknowledging what exactly is happening to us, becoming awake because of that, and then progressing beyond that. Generally, what happens is that a person does not have enough ability to dare, meaning to go beyond the norm of what they're telling you is the highest and see for yourself. Generally, people will adapt to other systems, customs, creeds, circles, cultures, etc. that are already laid out, so that way it just becomes like everything else. They just load it. You're just being told what to do, not creating anything. And this has come about because approximately 8,500 years ago, we began living in a fiction, an illusion. And this came about because a group of laws and rules were put forth, oaths, pacts, and decrees that we agreed to, that basically place someone else above us. And you will find the root to everything, especially if you're even looking for the root to darkness, within the concept of anything arriving or coming in front of you or saying, I'm greater, fall down in worship. So when you look at the reality, because all you're seeing is different variations of that when you're talking about the negative forces, just in the sense of how the world understands negative. I'll clarify that now. Not the negative on the side of the battery that allows it to charge the ground, not that negative, but the negative where it's bad things. And this again is the first problem with language, because language is not specific. It dances around. Each interpretation of each word is based on who you're asking. If you understand how language is put together, there are over 900 different interpretations of each word. So that means God for one person means God completely different for another person, because those people didn't go through two exact experiences. So everything that they say and do is different. Now this becomes a problem when you're in a matrix that works on codes also, because, like for instance with your computer, if you have it password protected and you put your code in but you miss one letter, you hit enter, it won't take it. So this is also how the mantras and the ancient languages and the things like that used to exist here on the earth for the beings that lived here were. If you needed keys and codes to things, you would get that specific thing. Now the language is, of course, what they call Babel, but leads back to much more. Babel is obviously a god of some sort. So what it actually tells you is it tells you that deep within this confusion of the Babel, or let us go down and confuse their language, becomes the story of whether or not there is an extraterrestrial. The answer to the question, of the notion that is there an extraterrestrial here on the planet with us? It's a very simple question to answer. Since you have so many people that want to worship, let their use be that they have solved something for us. To let us know that even though this entity is supposedly invisible, meaning most people go into church and go into the mosque and there is nothing there. They're saying it's an essence, so it's invisible to the naked eye. So they're serving an invisible God. Okay? So when you look deep into just a blatant statement made by the most popular God now, which is the Jesus, the Krishna, or the Christ, man now worshipped as God, just another variation of man throwing himself in front of everyone and saying, I'm the one, bow down to me. We find that there is this unique connection with, I'm looking at, just got linked out here, but I actually have notes here today. Everyone knows that I generally do now my stories and sessions with notes, because if you have to you got to make sure you don't miss anything with these stories. And people are like, well, wait a minute, I thought you missed out on it. You didn't explain this. Okay, so let me just separate this here. Excuse me. I do also have some movies and clips to show during this conversation today. It is fully interactive, because I'm going to let other people explain to you in a few short clips the same thing that I'm talking about right now, so you don't just have to say, is this coming from, Sevan? No, it's actually what's going on in the world. So where we're really at here, okay, so the popular God, as I said, is the Jesus figure, is really stemming into a point in time, and let me just get into the laws and the rules and the ethics and how this is put together. It's stemming back to a point in time where, whether we asked for it or whether it just came, and that's the difference in opinion to where this entity in particular came from, there was a king or a Caesar put over us. Okay? And the people, at this time, according to the book, it says that the people wanted this, that they were looking for this leader because they felt like they couldn't lead themselves. It's kind of like the same reason why, or the same inclination that we're having when we look to space and the stars for answers rather than ourselves. So there was a time in which they say there was a calling out from the people and saying, hey, we want a king over us. And thus a king, as you see in the Bible, Old Testament, it records it because it's really the Talmud of the Sumerian scripts. The Ten Commandments or Hammurabi's code. It actually says in there, Saul was put over them. Now, Saul is the beginning of the riddle, because the whole book you're dealing with is basically codes and riddles. Saul is Sal, or the serpent. It is synonymous with the entity that came in during a certain point in our history, approximately 8,500 years ago, and began to colonize. And this begins the illusion, because the illusion, as they notice, the illusion is obviously connected with the Illuminati, but they connect all their teachings back to Nimrod, the first civilizations. Because all of what I'm saying doesn't necessarily have to be on a spiritual tense. In fact, it actually crosses all dimensions, mental, spiritual, physical, and all the other tenses that we don't even know about. But what happens here is that you have to ask yourself a question before I get into this and start to explain these species to you and why some of these beings are different. You have to ask yourself a question: are you a mammal? Simple question. Are you a mammal? So according to what they teach you in your schools, you are a mammal because you give live birth, and there's other, the milk and all the different things that are associated with the mammal. Okay? So is an elephant a mammal? Yeah. But you don't look like an elephant though, right? No. Okay, so you don't look like an elephant, but you can be a mammal. Established. Look at the reptile. Immediately you see the snake. Now, he's of the species known as reptile, but is there another reptile that doesn't look like a snake? Yes. That's what I'm trying to get humanity to understand here, that you're a mammal in a human body, as they're saying, because you have genes that are associated with mammalian things of mammalian nature. But you're still in a body, which is basically a part of the illusion. It's like this illusion where we're all exactly the same because we've got 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. But this is just a vessel that we're putting on like a ship. So if we all get in the same car, we're all going to look the same. But that doesn't mean that there's the same people inside of each car. So that's where I started to figure out where all the big puzzle was where the puzzle kept stumbling everyone was. They couldn't figure out if we're one species and then there's another species, then where is it? It's actually inside of each person based on either the flora and fauna of the areas they're indigenous to, or the spirits in which they've made pacts, agreements, or oaths with since their conception or inception into this reality. So what I'm telling you is that just like you would see a reptile that would be looking different, but looking basically like a man, but have this cold-hearted nature, right? Okay, so then you would have an amphibian also, because these are genus. That's why this is called Genesis. This is about genes and DNA. Like, if you're not about it, that just means that you don't understand what's going on. Like, it's either for each individual person to attempt to rebuild their ladder or DNA chain, or they attempt to go and join organizations that say that they can do that for them or can help them with that. And that's why it's synonymous with the 33 degrees, because the 33 degrees is the levels of the spine, because all this stuff is basically one mathematical riddle about how to get out of the spiral or the pentagram. Now, obviously, inside of a spiral or pentagram or a world that's created, there would be some type of controller of it, someone that would understand everything that goes on with physical worlds. Okay, so that's where you get this whole serpent motif, because the serpent, known as the one with the wisdom, but what kind of wisdom? What kind of wisdom is the question? Like wisdom, there's a plethora of kinds of wisdom. I can give you wisdom about frequencies. I can give you wisdom about different things. So what was the serpent's wisdom? The serpent's wisdom was the knowledge of earth and everything that goes on earth. So if you had an earthly or a material desire, then it was known that the serpent could give you the information about that. Now remember, all these become synonyms. It's not always meaning in a physical reality. Sometimes you have to look at it on a spiritual level. That there's a bird-like idea or spirit. And then there is a serpent-like idea or spirit. And listening to one is because one is aloft in all higher states of consciousness, while listening to the other means one is material and on base states of consciousness. So you don't always have to make it the boogeyman or something like some shadow in your corner. In fact, it does everything that it can in not exposing itself that way. It knows that the cloak that it has, the ability to hide from your naked eye, which you believe is the only thing that can see stuff, is its strongest weapon. So remember, invisibility is the strongest weapon for these kind of individuals, because what they do seems to go transparent until you understand the symbol. And I made a remark about how I realized that what happens is if you catch a symbol, now you catch a symbol and you're trying to interpret it, you're trying to interpret a two-dimensional slow version of this particular symbol. So really what you're looking at is something that's already been done. Let me show you how this works. So what happens is that when you have these people that practice this Wicca, these particular faiths where they think that the circle and the pentagram is actually the symbol of the magic itself, that's not what they're saying. The circle is earth and the pentagram is the vessel or the human that's inside of it. So the circle and the pentagram has already been accomplished. So in the tense of you putting it on the ground and drawing it and trying to do a ritual, you've already been had. That's what they're actually saying. Like the moment that you didn't think you could draw it and get in there and then you're going to evoke and banish something, you've already been had. All of your actual, your steps that you're taking are already being managed and controlled by none other than serpent. Now, the reason why the serpent continues to live is not that it's just, some say it's this energy in the center of the ocean, et cetera, Satan in the middle of the sea, and much of that may be true, but understand that it's a successive bloodline of individuals who've taken on a certain level of genes and DNA, and they behave a certain way. So let's go ahead and get into some video here. Again, just so we can go over this, because for why I switched this to video, we can get some videos going on here. Just see it as now you have to understand the characteristics behind the controllers. Because first of all, they consider you as asleep or dead because you're not awake. This is why in school they teach a child how to write cursive, right? Because the curse is the language of those that are dead. So you're dealing with something immense here when you're talking about getting out of the matrix. Because you have to be fast and as quick as the ones that put it together. To be able to do that is easily accomplished by thought. Thought is fast and quick. This is why they use thoughts also as a weapon. You have to take your thoughts and start allowing them to propel all of your subsequent bodies out of this pin. Because some people say, well, how do you get out? It's a simple thought. You have to be able to hold your own character without going into earth three-dimensional five pentagram combustive nature long enough so that you can see that what is beyond that is more expansive. Now, I'll tell you, when you leave one frequency and go to another, the space in between is known as the void. So in this area, you will feel alone. You will feel like you're not right. You may go back. It's like going in between two islands. That's how I termed it. One island, you already know everything that's going on. You figured it all of it out. And you know you're ready to expand. But you can't see the other island. So you start to swim. And only persistence and dedication will make you believe that there is something else out there for you. And you will eventually reach that. But in between, that's all the trials and tribulations and the tests will pull people back to the consciousness of this world. So just understand that people will get far from their religion, their culture, their creeds, and things that they've collected thus far. It's done DNA. You have to keep redoing it. You should go find something else. So what happens is that it's about fear. And that's why these entities thrive on fear. Everyone knows this. Fear is synonymous with a snake because everyone is like naturally scared of a snake. I'm not, but most people, you throw a snake out there, they're going to be right? They're not going to try to step on his head. And believe me, this conversation today is not about duality. Much of this conversation is metaphor. It is something that you take inside and that you quell all energies and put them in their place and continue to proceed. But you can't let the knowledge and the information and the power, because that's also what that's synonymous with, control you, take over you, make you go haywire. Remember, a lot of the knowledge and the information is synonymous with electricity, synonymous with energy. So when you take in information, truth, knowledge, it gives you energy. Now, people in the ancient times started categorizing those energies. And that's where you get this whole snake and bird. So, and then there's other emblems such as the ram, the dog. They know that even a group of spirits. Now, let's talk about first what spirits really are. So everyone can. This is like the question. This is like the conversation that you have with the child when the child is needing to know the truth behind what sex really is, etc. So it's like an uncomfortable conversation. Let me just go ahead and get my switcher ready here for these videos. So what are spirits? Now, when you leave here as a spirit, because remember, there's one inside of you, how you've carried on here and who you've carried on with, all those you've made bindings, oaths, pacts, and things with, and said, I'll be with you forever, and are we in this together? Yes, and blah, blah, blah. All of that biorhythm information that goes across timelines will be packed up, and you will go with it. And as you progress, remember, there's other geometry. There's not just physical planes like pentagram planes. This is when you came into a pentagram plane. Okay, so that's why you have this physical body, etc. But when you pack all this stuff up and get ready to leave, the geometry is totally different. It's probably not nowhere near based on inorganic geometry. So what happens is as you're now out into the next level of expanse with all of your riders, all those that you made bindings, oath, pacts, and rituals with, these are none other than other individuals who have died also on the timeline somewhere as individual spirit souls. I'm me. Don't you think you are you? People need to start clearing their mind about what they believe. You think you're you, so that's solo. Okay, so now Solo goes into space, but Solo's not Solo no more. Solo then picked up other solos. That's what again humanity has to understand. This is why even in the symbol of the division sign, you will find the truth to what I'm telling you. The division sign is a dot and a line here. This line, these dots or orbs or spheres are synonymous with organic life or souls. This one is you and the other one is you. And the line in between is you not having the knowledge, the divisor, you not being able to have the knowledge that you also have a spiritual counterpart. That not you may have one, you think you have one, but you know you have one, right? So the being that I'm talking about today when I'm referring to the serpent is the divisor. Okay? Now, some people say, well, no, the serpent meant wisdom. No, the serpent meant wisdom about earth. You didn't read right if you think that it meant wisdom and then everything was love and joy and happiness. No, Hermes, which was also synonymous with the serpent, taught the language, the Babel, and all the rest of the stuff that made a world, but was imperfect. Oh, it's on a wobble. And again, my idea here today is not to kick the world under the bus. My idea here today is to get us to understand how to perfect what has already been done. But we need to know what's been done. What did our ancestors do? Our ancestors took a king. And this becomes the same reason why you vote today. Okay? Why do you vote? Why do you go to the poll to get screwed? Why is there rites or like rites of passage and rituals? Why is there a caucus, as in the Caucasus Mountains? Like why is this embedded within the language as a code? Okay? Now, here's what I found out. That no matter what we want to believe, that there is a group of people that have become very large that believe that massively intelligent and very agile entity entered into the planet approximately 8,500 years ago. They say that especially during that time, because of how the world was set up, it was basically Pangea, that this impacted meteor burrowed itself. They call it the Great Worm. Burrowed itself down into the center and the core of the planet. And that's why they said from then forth, it was then going to be everyone's choice if whether or not they could actually resist it. Because to remove it would actually be to destroy the planet. And the reason for this is that this entity became, they say, entwined around the planet. And it's, as you see, there's cores in the planet. There's veins in the planet of jewels and gems. There's ley lines. The Earth has like a whole acupuncture system. The Earth is known as, in many cases, the human body itself, Tiamat itself, that there was not the human body, but Tiamat was known as the great dragon itself, meaning that there was many points, measurements, degrees, energies, veins of gold, conductivity, steam, explosion, implosion. Look at how many molecules and minerals are here. So all of that was already going on. So now what we see is we see, okay, I got to snap out of it. I got to realize that humanity's trip here on Earth has been much more expansive than we thought, but there was already what we call an alien invasion. The alien invasion itself took place with us accepting something else as over us. So don't see the alien invasion just as a spaceship landing somewhere. See it as the moment that there's an alien invasion in your mind, or extraterrestrial, something else that is with you. Now, notice how, again, that's what I was going to say earlier. In the biblical text, it says, I'm in this world, but not of this world. That is the quote. I am in this world, but I am not of this world. So when you're dealing with something, like as I always say, that what goes on with the human rights of this planet, whoever is putting forth those laws and rules, they obviously are not humans, because the laws and rules are not humane. How could you, if someone makes a mistake, lock them up forever or until their own known life is over and just throw away the key on them? That's not humane. So whoever put those rights together also was not pro-human. So this is where we'll begin today. Let me just change up some things. I'm going to have to go slow through this because generally I want to speed up, and I want to talk about things and just use my own cue. But you got to get this message today, and you got to get it clear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video for you, and then I'm going to explain to you exactly what this gentleman is talking about, as we again discover completely if whether or not there's an extraterrestrial here. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Uh-oh. I don't see any audio on that channel. Okay, let me see if I can see some audio here on this channel really briefly. I probably have to test that out again. Let me actually go here to a couple videos and see if there's audio on one track and not audio on this track, because I definitely wouldn't like to be playing the video and you guys can't hear it. And for some reason, I'm just getting a reading that there's no audio on this track, even though it should be. So I have to check that out during break time. But let me just give you the brief synopsis of what the first gentleman that I was attempting to show you was explaining. His name is David Wynn. Now, basically what he's explaining is that when you go to court, what a courthouse actually is the actual state itself. Because a state, or when you say state, it is only a piece of paperwork for these individuals. So what a courthouse is a courthouse is a vessel, like a boat, on land. Like it has come from the dock and is now on the land and is parked on the land. So you could see it as like a ship on the land, but how it operates though, that ship, which is also synonymous with spaceship, lordship, all of these different worship, a ship, okay? So that ship is known to be a foreign or alien vessel. This is how it works with when you want to understand how galactic law runs up against common law, etc. So what happens, or maritime law, the law of the sea or the ocean or the law of space. So what happens is that you have these vessels that are basically foreign. And this is why when you go into any courthouse, there are initiated individuals using codes and symbols all over the place, right? So what happens is that now, once you swear under the oath, notice they give you their book. It's the Bible. Of course, the double bail, or we don't need to even get into that, but bail and the rest of what's going on, the serpent worship, the ram worship, etc., the sacrifices, etc. in the Bible, they give you that. They say, well, go ahead and swear by oath, okay? And then sign with your signature. Sign with your signature in cursive these documents, right? So really what you're dealing with, because they're also talking about your rights, your human rights, you're dealing with the ritual then when you go to court, okay? Let me show you how tricky these people are, how they trap others in stars that they have figured out the geometric configuration to. If you wonder why, and geometry, if you wonder why they have certain geometry behind shields, certain geometry behind sheriff badges, etc. It's because they are basically hunting for individuals that are breaking their laws that they put forth, why they don't abide by none of the laws. So the moment that you kind of accept it, accept the system, accept the king, you automatically are out being hunted all the time. When you're on the freeway, then boom, they hit you with a speeding ticket, you go into court, they swear you in, then next thing you know, there's a ritual and weird stuff taking place. Then you got to stand up when someone walks in. Now you've agreed that they're higher than you. They're on a level then on a platform higher than you, speaking down to you, right? So what you're really looking at is that this is why these Saturnalians and Martians are here in this reality. This is the extraterrestrial component. Because see, it's the extraterrestrial idea that wants to harness and enslave the beings that live on the place that is terrestrial. So I'm not talking about just like a specific place. This could be happening on any planet. What I'm saying is when there is someone that sees themselves as different and then foreign to you, and then goes about hunting you all day as they tell you to go ahead and pray, then you have a situation on your hands, right? So where I'm at in this is I'm going to help you get rid of that situation. Like that's what my responsibility here is on this planet. That is the real system. It's like the real galactic enforcer, as we call it, the spiritual police, etc. What we're dealing with is that we have to get these malignant jinn. Now, that's why I was explaining to you that they run in packs. So when you go into clubs, notice the club or the cave or the den and the place that is dark and dank, okay? So when you go into these places, they have these energies that are present there that are in groups. Now, when you say, well, who are they? Okay? They are spirits Who are the spirits? Other human souls that was doing craziness for one life, got initiated, did whatever, and now they're on the next frequency over, and they're in packs, which is with other ones, just like you hang out with your friends. And the whole thing is attempting to get someone to believe what you're saying. Now, remember that's why this term became synonymous with whispering, because the whisper is basically the idea that comes in your mind that you need to know whether or not, is that my idea or is that the idea of something else? And remember, I brought up before about how candida, which is a worm, when you have too much of it in your body, which of course that's the diet that they have everyone on, the thoughts of the candida, I need candy, I need more sugar. Sugar, of course, is a word synonymous with serpent. Then once I get, it'll send a signal to the brain, I need that, I need that. It doesn't care about how you're physically, mentally, spiritually faring. Right? So that's why this is, again, still synonymous with the serpent, because it doesn't really care. It's like a glassy eye, is what they're saying, that it doesn't have an emotion. And this is why. Each species has their own characteristics. So do you always see snakes together hanging out in the wild? No. You see each and every one of them in individual holes. Okay? They quarrel a lot too if another one crawls in the other one's hole. Okay? So, but monkeys or mammals, you see them, they're communal. So that same gene or energy passes on. So most of these individuals who are passing these laws and edicts and decrees and treating people any old kind of way are cold-hearted. They never come out. They don't even want to see people. I even seen some people around here, they're really, really rich people. You look at them, they're, ugh, why are you even around? You see, so they've inherited that trait. So what's inside of them is the entity. Like I'm telling you, man, I'm giving you, it may not be coming out the best way, but I'm giving you every single key to understanding why you may have misfortunes, why things life after life are not going right. It's because you picked up something that you have to put down. Don't think that you're so big and so expansive that you can just take everything. That's the fool. There's no completely positive or completely negative. So you have to have the balance and the harmony of it. But how you understand if you found the balance and harmony is with happiness. With what you're living in, the lifestyle that you're in, are you finding happiness or are you on the struggle? Are you on the grind? So now we can start to set up ourselves in this, what I call the division. Since the division's already taken place, you now start telling inside of yourself who's got to go and who's going to stay. Like this is a meditational exercise, if you want to say that. But what you're really, of course, dealing with here again is that you now have to see that inside of your body is this energy field. And this is exactly what's going on. Your body is this energy field. And it's very similar to a torus and a wheel. Okay, but the wheel is inflated to a certain degree, meaning that it actually has what a wheel would have when you put air in the tire. So it's inflated with its energies. So when something pokes a hole into it and starts to extract the energy out of it, then not only does the field start to come off of balance, the field loses overall power and starts to slow down. Now, if you start moving too slow in a physical reality, then death would be upon you. That's, of course, what happens in nature. You see that if you're not moving around and you're not fast, something's going to happen. If you lay on the ground all day and all night, eventually one day something's going to happen if you're moving that slow. So remember, the whole idea here is to keep your field moving harmonically and at the greatest speed possible. Okay? So for harmonics, because remember, if you go too fast, all of a sudden, this may not be in harmony. It may blow your system. So the key is that you have to use your weights and measures is the key. Okay. So now what you have is that individuals in making all these agreements and things with individuals have gotten these connections to their field that are pulling energy from them. Okay. Now, everyone has this going on. Just as a mother will have a child there suckling the child is pulling energy or essence from the mother. The child is also giving that energy and essence back in another way. So we're not talking about the symbiotic relationships. We're talking about where there's a constant draining and you can't pick the individual up and the individual can't pick you up. And then there's a constant feeding going on. So you have to see also that this is not just with people that you know in physicality. This is also within music. This is also within drugs or the dragons. This is also within other essences that you may just look over every now and then as not being alive. But the idea is alive. The idea is the power. Like, let us think about this. With an idea, I've seen in the meditation, the idea, when the energy is moving, start to push the energy in another direction. So this means idea has an inertiating force. It can push something. But of course, it's even more than that. Ideas make up the entire thing in many tenses. So we have to see that when you hook too many of these draining energies into your energy system, as a generator, then it starts to pull your energy down. And now when you're getting pulled down, then you're descending through frequencies. And this is why Earth is in itself set up like a caste system, where what is perceived as the higher frequency benefits off of one thing, and then what is perceived as the lower frequency is sitting on another. And that's where you get the injustices. So because the way that the world meshes out, obviously, if you see these really rich people and then they're walking around as if they're doing everything for everyone, and then you see these people putting a lot of time and attention and love into things and they're getting nothing, then obviously then the balance system has come off. So how does the natural laws and balance systems come off? That's with our choices and our decisions. And when a lot of us began to massively, like what you see with media, make the incorrect decisions, then we all end up in a circumstance that basically we've been coerced to go in, but not necessarily where we want to go. And this is something that I really want to get people to know now, is that a lot of people flirt with darkness. They flirt with this whole, the pentagram and the goat and the rock and roll music and the spirits and the souls, and they flirt with it, never realizing that there is a huge level of this spiritual stuff already going on. So if you don't understand it and you say, okay, well, I'm a magician, or I like magic, or you say, well, I do this, and you give one of the labels, I'm Illuminati, if you say this, and you don't know all of what that entails, which is what's happening to a lot of people, then someone or something is basically pulling you down based on things that you don't even know are done. So this is the last trick. This is the point where you're on your way to the real ascension, the area in which you rise into other frequencies and understand how to travel through frequencies, and something wants to hold you back. So you have to see it as that, as whether or not you're going to be able to take this state of mind that the world has introduced, like just how you feel inside about people and how you may talk about people and what you believe to be the truth, etc. Will that really allow you to progress? And so, again, I'm going to go ahead and take a break here because I really wanted to, I'm having certain technical issues because my entire message today is actually lined up to videos. However, those videos don't seem to be playing sound. So that definitely gives me a concern of whether or not anyone's going to be able to hear them as far as my meter. So let me go ahead and take a break here. And then when we come back, or as they say, always forward, we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the ocean. We're going to talk about the full moon, since it's full moon today. We're going to talk about when the energies propagate more. We're going to be talking about how to make the correct decisions in this reality that are going to get you to more expansive levels of who you are. And also we're going to talk about discernment, or basically being able to tell whether or not when something is going on from some type of thing that you may be participating in, or someone that you may have latched a hold of in one way or another. And what I mean by that is some people have experienced in life where things are going very well for them, and then all of a sudden there's this shift in things. And then they can't understand where that shift is actually coming from. So they need to understand how to troubleshoot such things. So that's what we're going to talk about when we come back to Astro Quest. Wholeness. Okay, wholeness to everyone. We're forward. Yeah, there's definitely some stuff going on in the studio today just with the equipment, but hey, we get through it. And that's kind of what I like about just having the ability to just record things and just to keep broadcasting until we get the message clear. Like sometimes I can get everything prepped up properly, and then all of a sudden there'll be like, you know, some technical situation. So I just keep pushing through it. But, you know, I wanted to tell everyone, okay, so also the solution for this, for these spirits, because some people are like, well, you know, what do we do with negative energies then? Like, how are we ever going to transmute negative energies? The one is definitely being an example, because what happens is that negative energies in many cases are like shadows. They're trapped, is what is known in the ancient books, is that when an individual dies, and they die in one of these matrices, and they believe that there is no spiritual freedom for them, then they remain trapped by that idea. And that has a lot to do, again, with the whole pentagram nature of this reality. So if you happen to go in an area where these energies are concentrated, these trapped energies that, again, do gravitate to each other based on frequency, then you can find yourself laden with these type of energies. Now, generally, in a world that has a lot of knowledge, if there's certain levels of these kind of energies that have not been guided into higher frequencies, then they generally reside in one place. So what I'm telling you is that in this world, there was one place where energies that basically couldn't be led into the light, as they would say, or into the full spectrum light, would reside, while all the rest of the spirits and energies were already balanced, because there were a lot of spiritual workers, which you would call what you would see today as the shaman or the tribal leader, etc., would make sure that their lineage and everyone in their lineage was taken care of on a spiritual level. And the reason for that is obvious, that you need to make sure that just as when a person comes into a new world, that they're taken care of. So that's also where the divisor comes in at, is because there's been a break in our lineage to where individuals that used to teach us the spiritual passage of rights, or whatever you want to call it, are no longer present. And what's actually present is the knowledge and the rights of one particular system that is arrayed, meaning that there's a lot of things that it makes up. There's a lot of details to it, and that's just the thing. Once you come into a physical reality, all of how it was put together is put together by the one who understands the spiral force, or the one who understands the phi, and that later on, once it comes into 2D, gets interpreted to us as a pentagram. But remember that would be saying that's the completion of it. So I think that what you're also looking at, if you want to understand how to look at many of these symbols, especially as a spiral, as a positive force, because we can see obviously the beauty in what it can create, is to see that the spiral itself is what you would get on that dimension. So let's say we'll call it 6th or 7th, 8th dimension, the higher dimension. The pentagram is what it turns into once it gets on 2-dimension, once you take it into a 2-dimensional state of mind. And so that's why I know 100% that they're dealing with a 2-dimensional God. I mean, a God that only sees, is a two-faced, good and evil type, I like you, then I don't like you type God, because that's what's actually happening within the Old Testament. I'm sure everyone can see that if you're just conscious at all, and then you read the level of killing and murdering going on in the book, then you're obviously going to have to come into question with something, because that's not how you live today. So, meaning that it's not you won't go into your spirituality so much that you'll go and kill someone for it. And that's why I wanted to play this recording by Pierre Sabak. What he was talking about is the root to the word Taliban, which is the Theban, or the one who is from the Theban priesthood, meaning that it's a sacrificial religion or initiation with the serpent. So But that's the level or the intensity of what comes out of complete devotion. You see, like, sometimes when you look at one individual, you can say, well, they're crazy. Like, why would they go to that extent? But it actually means that they're the ones who are going the complete way, the way that it all really leads to, if you truly believe in it. And that's powerful knowledge, because you have to see it from both sides of the coin, because what really happens is between that you have all these fakers. You have all these people that say that they practice one thing, or that they believe in one thing or whatever, but they don't even study that. Like, I think, like Christians, for instance, they need to read, starting with the Bible. Like, they don't even know their own book. So what happens is that in a reality where there's this going on, and I can go back to the beginning of this message, because again, earlier it was like, technical disaster going on, but I could care less. I use brute force at times. I'll just keep talking until the electronics bow down, for better lack of words, and do what they need to do. Like, so what happens is if you have master the computer, why don't you? That's the thing what people need to figure out, is like, why is all this stuff that's around us now not even being utilized for its true potential? Is it a chagrin, meaning that it just goes more to show how ignorant we're becoming? Like, if we accept something and we take it on us as ours, and then we don't really understand its full nature, then we talk about we love it. Like, can you love something that you haven't searched all the way through? And is our reality teaching us not to search things completely through? We move very fast through emotions. Like, I think that the emotional level is when you can get somebody really happy, they're there with you, they're seeing eye to eye, and then when they switch in emotion, they're not pleased. So what kind of energies are doing that even within the individual? Like, why can't the person stay constant? They're constantly fluctuating between one energy for another, and that's also that movement, of course, synonymous with the serpent, but more or less synonymous with DNA. DNA constantly changing, and this change we perceive as good, but what are we changing into? Like, with the programs that are currently running, like, everyone just, like I said, they scream Illuminati, they scream Masons, but they don't really understand what these people are doing. So in retrospect, because we've already identified, especially to the church and these different organizations, that these treaties and creeds based on this particular cult is everywhere, what do? Like, most of the people, they're still yet to catch up to figure out that's going on. So this is also what this conversation is about. That's why I'm in touch with the people that I'm in touch with here on this planet, is to show you step by step exactly what's happening, so that you can do what you need to do to activate, so that you can pull the other ones that are connected to your biorhythm out this mess. Because realistically, especially for the male, because the male, if you notice that the female, the matriarch, was already here. They are the receivers of it. Like, they're the ones that now have to bear the labor. It is labor indeed. Raising a child is laborious. So if something was so pleasant, why is there such a great labor? And it's because there is a secret about the seaman. Seaman, the man's seaman, of course, is a seaman going throughout the universe. It also looks very similar to what a serpent would look like. And it's just reeling throughout the universe. And on a microcosmic level, it goes through the womb, and it's looking for an egg to fertilize, meaning that it's looking for a womb or a matrix to drop itself into. So that's also the plight of the earth, is because the earth has accepted seeds that have been like thorns and thistles to her. If you want to understand the line of the matriarch and how the matriarch used to run this, began on matriarch. When you begin anything with a generative principle that stays fixed, you are dealing with the matriarch. So the matriarch then has to take in different energies. And that's why everything is all symbolic, but the symbols are all on the bodies. The genitals of the genital principles of the male and the female equal the most occult symbols, whether it's a snake or whether it's mountains or curves or whatever it is. So, like I said, it's only when everyone's like, oh, he said Gucci or whatever, then all of a sudden the message is lost. So then what happens is, again, while we're playing around in this language and trying to still figure out and make heads and tails of it, it kind of seems like this to me sometimes. Because I know they don't speak the language that we speak. Let's say, for instance, that something didn't make sense anyway. And then somehow, thousands of years later, you make sense of it. That only occurred because you kept messing with it so much that you decided that you want to force yourself to make it make sense. But meanwhile, if there was someone who put that there, that confusing thing first, they're going to be laughing because they're going to be like, oh, he even thinks he figured it out. But it was foolishness to begin with. That's what the serpent wisdom is like. That's what, of course, I'm here to tell people about too, that you don't really want to play around with something that's invisible and then act like it's not there. Like I've been noticing that what's happening with a lot of people is that they don't even think that this stuff is real and it exists. And thus it's like it's a heyday with them all the time. Like all the time, they can't seem to base their life on what's happening because so many things are occurring. The key to this is to cut cords, to actually separate yourself from all the chaos and the static that is clouding you. And when you do that, you actually feel like you can collect yourself and begin your healing process. So this is all a part of it. Don't think that sometimes when we look at the individuals around us, remember, it's their soul plus whatever else they agreed to and hooked up with. Okay? So when you take their stuff on too, and then you're damaged, you don't know what's going on with you. You see how it just becomes like crabs in the bucket? I'm telling you, when you start to look at Earth from a more of an astral level, and then you start to see the plight that people are in, every time you dive back in there, you see it is somewhat of a rescue mission. You got people wandering on this plane, hundreds of thousands of them bowing down to something that they really are. And then when you ask them, where is it? They get mad at you. Then they tell you, well, it's your father. Well, why can't I see my father? Basically, where does the foolishness stop? And when do we start seeing all of the dynamics instead of getting crazy about it? Because what happens is, first of all, the moment that someone starts talking about spirits, then they start getting linked into this bad group. Oh, he knows about spirits, or oh, she knows about spirits. But when you're talking about someone who is versed in it, meaning that they know everything about it and how it affects us, then you actually get closer to the keys to why so many things are taking place that we don't see physically. So to just to get into some of the stuff that I definitely want to mention during this conversation, I did check the videos during the break, and unfortunately somehow the sound didn't get transferred onto them. But again, all this stuff can really be explained just directly by me. I want you to see that also, as I was talking about earlier, when you want the extraterrestrial component, you get it when someone has separated themselves from you. If these individuals then take a vessel and then drive it onto land, then not just dock it, but put it onto land like a ship. All I can see is in the visualization is a ship that is actually on land, but there's no water around it. And the reason why it has to be done like that, and I'm sure the configuration and the building and the ley lines is all done, is because now when someone comes inside of it, now they get hooked up with things. And this is why, for some reason, it's just telling me, man, this is some of the deepest levels of injustice that's ever being done is when you wrangle someone up, like you take them from the streets, they don't even know anything about spirituality or whatever, then you throw them in some type of court, like you're the prosecutor of demons or whatever, and then you give them all of these times and sentences and cases, and then you get them all binded up, and then when they get in there, they throw them a Bible. It's almost like the scapegoat. You can then blame all of what you've done wrong on something else and say, I'm not going to do it anymore, and then that's just the end of it. And why you still continue to do wrong. You see, all of the whole thing, that's why Earth is the way that it is. Like some people are saying, well, why is Earth having such a big problem? It's because of this. So how do you rid the world of this infestation or disease? Easy. All you have to do is raise your vibration. When you look into the Ayurveda, you'll find the knowledge that shows you that the human body has fluids in the spine. And that these fluids are like your fuel. They govern whether you feel powered up and ready to go do something amazing, or you're in this low frequency, like all is lost. You see, because the ideas that you become more susceptible to are based upon what frequency that you're actually on. So basically, if you're powered up, you're charged up, the only ideas that are coming through your mind are pure excellence, magnificence, how to do things in the philanthropist, the humanitarian, how to do things great for everyone. But in the low frequency, the ideas such as, we're all in it on our own, just do it for yourself, forget all of them, man, I'm going to do what you're going to need to take. All of those ideas come from the low frequency. See, what I've also been trying to explain to people in this conversation, because you got to get enough of the two, you got to understand how this works on a spiritual level. But if you want to use your micro-macro vision, you don't always got to tune it into the ghost world. Look, in the language, look at the word district. This is actually the name of the Dark Lord of the underworld. And tricked means trickery, okay? So when you go into the district, then they start running this illusion that they're like your overseer, and they've taken custody of you, and now you've been stopped in space, and that now you're under their laws, their rules, their edicts, their decrees, but this is because you accept it. Now, I'm not telling people to go run into their courthouse. That's not what I'm saying. Why are you going to do it on a physical level? Have we not learned enough to not be dealing with a physical entity that knows everything about the physical plane from that level? When you're talking about something like this, now you do it from the spiritual level. What is the spiritual level of us breaking off the shackles from us? It's in the energy. The energy is in the breath. The breath is what also generates within the system these fluids, and it gives them the energy they need now, because this is how the system works. Here's another major key, especially with those that understand the powers behind the Shilajit and the Chulin and gene builders, etc. What happens is that these elements are like minerals. They need to be charged up. Your body is the real builder, so it's got to be able to take these elements and construct it into something that you can use. So when you're talking about, well, how do I succeed? How can I get out of this rut that I'm in? Now I give you all the perspectives. I've given you the spiritual perspective, showing you that on the spiritual plane, okay, when spirits leave Earth, when they die, the condition that they're in and the condition in which the biorhythms of the things that they've connected to is in goes with them. If they think that they're trapped in Oob, or the corner, which is the other name for the pentagram, then they end up in this basically a dark world. And this is what the Dr. William Baldwin CV talks about in regards to being able to see that many individuals were just stuck. Many spirits were just stuck and didn't realize that they could have already went beyond. Now, these are realm dynamics. This is not stuff that we can speak very deeply on, know everything, every single connection to it. But just understand, a lot of spirits are just stuck and frustrated. And then here you come. So that's also why when we're asking for something, we need to be careful who we're asking. Meaning that all of this now is then energy and information. So if you're asking something for energy and information, you need to be fully familiar with that. Because remember, all of us are in arcs or vessels or vehicles, so we have to go and get gas at times. Now, your family and your friends and the ones who care about you give you the fuel that you need, right? Or is that not the case anymore? See, this is also what you're noticing in the adjustment in the reality, is that what used to fuel us and not really have us basically looking so much for a way out of this was everyone was still in family groups where everyone was looking out for each other and no one was overlooked. Now, children are being overlooked. So what I'm telling you is that society is evolving. What has been hidden has now no choice but to reveal itself. It's none other than another part of us. And every single tense, especially the people who have already been through the mixing of their genes, inside of you are energies that are immense. But in that immense energy, there comes a great responsibility. The responsibility was given to you with choice. At a certain point, everyone's going to come up to the point where where all their choices in life and things are going to be laid out in front of them. That is known as death. For those who are doing things that are building and expanding things, they're looking forward to that point. Do you see how that works? It's almost like if you've been doing what you need to do for prolonged periods of time, then you're already looking forward to the point where you're going to be able to graduate beyond this vessel and get a new vessel. You can't see the universe all the time as doomsday. You just see it as being fair. It'll actually give you exactly what you put in. So if you put in an expansive level of things into it, then what you benefit from that is what's there. It's basically what's written for you. You write it based on your deeds, not just based on words. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a moment. I guess we could probably take some calls. Giving out a lot of information today. Some of it, you could take it. Some of it you can leave. But just understand that what's happening here in the world just requires you to get involved as far as understanding what's going on and expanding beyond it. This is like the soil at times to what you really are to become. Meaning that some people would take the message and say, well, maybe that message is really negative. If you see anything as negative, understand it as soil, meaning that it is the pain in which many people have grown off of. Now, those that are experiencing pain, we want to relieve them of that pain. There is a such position, meaning that there are people who do go in even to the spiritual world and start releasing those individuals that are there by teaching them what they're to do. But in many ways, I think that happens every time you talk to someone. Meaning that when you talk to someone and you explain to them what you feel is the truth, don't be surprised if it's not just them listening. And when you also are just looking at that one person, start seeing it as a lot of people. Because that'll also give you a lot more motivation in order to get that complete being ready to progress. And this also has to be done by offering people solutions on that sliding scale of the caste system that they're actually on now. Meaning, don't say to the people, hey, I'm up here, I'm on top of the ladder. Like, come up here. Go down and instruct them on how they can get strong enough to climb. So I didn't say go down and pick them up, put them on your back and climb up with them. That's not what we're talking about here. We've tried that before. Like, look at a lot of the religions and things are governed based on those principles. It doesn't work. The person has to be able to carry their own. So instead of giving it to them, teach them how to get it themselves. That's exactly what we're doing here at the Resistance and definitely on Astro Quest. So if you want to call in, there is a number provided in the box below this. Actually, it may be a little bit further down. Let me actually see if I can get that on. Okay, yeah, we're going to take a really brief break, and when I come forward, I'm going to definitely take some calls and answer some questions about what was brought forth today and if whether people understand it or not. We did talk about quite a few components. Some of those are mixed. Some people may ask, well, how does the whole Satan component or that component come into it? You just have to understand that you're dealing with large spiritual ideas that are concentrated, meaning that just the whole idea and the principle of a culture can be embodied within a particular symbol and a particular system and a way of being and a mind state. And then if people choose to load that only and have that as their only rotation, then that becomes a spirit or a vacuum to that. See, the thing is that regardless of whatever it is, if it attracts someone, then it's pulling something in. So that's why there becomes a great responsibility with this work. Like some people say, well, does this spiritual work start on this spiritual plane? There is spiritual work on spiritual planes, yes, but much of this work starts on a physical plane. It starts with you here with the tools that you have doing things, because this is basically what's been given to you to see what you can do with this. Meaning, what can you do with these hands? Like, if we bump you up to greater powers and abilities to do things, will you necessarily do that with it? And sometimes this is synonymous in the physical world, as if you're given energy, will you use that energy to propel the entire movement and the entire action of us expanding ourselves forward, or will you pull it back? So it's just a simple decision. Are you going to build or are you going to destroy? And right now, you can see in the world that so many people have just been convinced to pull from it. So now you have to show people the rewards in putting into it. And that's the only switch that we're talking about here. And I do want to mention something that someone told me, thought it was valuable information. They say that if you're normally watching the toilets on a certain hemisphere, and you see when you flush the toilet, the water turns in a certain direction, let's say that's counterclockwise, and of course on the opposite sphere, it spins the opposite way. They say within the last 2 months that the water has begun to spin in the other direction, showing that there really was some level of a shift. So if you're seeing slight shake up, certain things are unseating themselves, you may be in that in-between position of going from one frequency to another. Hold on strong. Definitely absorb the information, take what you need, but leave the rest. Understand that not all the time what you see in physicality is exactly what's going on. You have to lend your spiritual eye at times to the situation. And also see it as it is. Understand that the symbol itself, even though a past tense or two-dimensional tense of a much greater message, at times does send out the two-dimensional idea of what that symbol really means, meaning that it can be limited to how it's being brought forth. But ultimately, where we truly exist in our greatest potential is without such tools and hindrances. So I'm not going to be able to, again, take calls today, unfortunately, only because these telephone lines are, I need to pull the numbers to them. If you do know the number, you happen to be on the line, you want to call in, you can call in now. But this is just a phone line that we just set up, so I don't necessarily have the number to this. Actually, let me just log in real quick. I'm going to take but a second. I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to say something if they need to say something. It's also amazing time. Like, there's an immense level of information that I've been going through that, I take a lot of course, it's a new baby, so there's only so much time that I really have to put into things, but realistically, I've been pushing really hard to get the last part of a great deal of information in regards to the codes to this matrix, meaning the whole expanse of exactly who we are and why we're here. Because here's another thing that started to dawn on me just the other day. I was like, well, why is it since we know they know an intrinsic part of our story that they're not telling, why is it so important not to allow us to get that story? Like, how immense could that story really be? What kind of information could it really contain? Sometimes if you want to really, boost your energy levels, you can just think about things like that. How much, if everyone's running around here like they're basically clueless, like all the people that may know something, they're closed-lipped about it. It's like the joke's on you, basically. Nobody knows. They're saying, no, nobody knows where everyone come from. They don't know where they came from. You see what I mean? So then you start to realize that maybe it's because where I really came from is so expansive, they would never let me know that I came from there, because that would be the end of their control. No longer would they seem great because, of course, based on their reputation, like what they've done to get what has been put into this world right now, then you would easily see it as not the way that things should be done. Meaning that if you really tapped into your biorhythm and you went all the way back to the beginning of what we're calling the universe, just in the incredible nature of what is taking place, you definitely wouldn't get a story about some people stealing some people from their land and then making them go and work somebody else's land for free. And you wouldn't get stories like massive destruction and nuclear bombs, and you wouldn't get stories like that. So, I think that, again, we have a brilliant opportunity right now to just see things as they are and allow it to actually push us into who we're to become. So I saw someone called, and fortunately I didn't catch the line. If you want to call again, you can go ahead, and I'll wait on your call from area code 208. And then we'll just bring that person in, and we'll see what they have to say. And then after that, we'll definitely adjourn today. But it's been one of those things that you can see now why it just requires you to be watching everything. Meaning it requires you to actually become that adult or that adept and see every single decision that you make as being so important because it has to do with you. This is another thing about, and actually we're going to go ahead and take this call that way. I don't get long-winded on this. Wholeness, you're definitely on Astro Quest from caller from area code 1850, Wholeness. Hello. Excuse me, caller from area code 208, you're on Astro Quest. Can you hear us? Okay, that caller may be having some technical issues. Let's take another call here. Wholeness caller, you are on Astro Quest.
Yes.
Do you want to, if you can, go ahead and mute your line and ask your question. Thanks for calling in.
Oh, yeah. So what do? I just hold until it picks up, or what?
You can call from area code 208. You're on.
Okay. Oh, excuse me. No, you just have to hit mute. I'm going to let her go ahead and get that information. All you have to do is push mute on the live stream or just close the page.
Caller, you are on Astro Quest.
And to all our people that are listening in, I do apologize. It's just one of those drawbacks of being on a streaming channel, so people don't get the information into somewhat of a lag. But just for that call, that you are on the air, just so that you know.
Oh, me? I'm on the air?
Yes, you are.
Oh, well, I have a question about reincarnation. And in one of the books that I have read, what is it, Soul Metrics, it was stated that it's soul retrieval. Reincarnation is soul retrieval. I was a little bit familiar with it. I'm familiar with, I don't know if you know of Robert Morningstar.
Yes.
But he says that when you die, not to go towards the light.
Okay, let me explain to you the entire...
So what do you say about that?
Well, let me explain the entire process, but I'm going to need you to see if you can close the page that that the live stream is on, just because we're talking directly through Skype, so you'll be able to hear me.
Oh, okay. So you don't want. Okay. So I should just turn this off.
Yeah, just turn the actual live stream page off. I do apologize. We do need to kind of find another way to do these calls, but of course, since we're using Skype, all the audio is through Skype now. But let's just understand the reincarnation process in itself, in the steps, because once you're leaving the physical body. Let me just close this window here. Once you leave the physical body, at this point, then now you're taking everything that you've collected at that point. And so your ray or your shine or your light has a certain spectrum to it. Let's call that just the biorhythm. Okay, so now what happens is you are going to now find another vessel that is compatible with where you're going next. You see what I mean? So how that works on our planet is when the male and the female come together, there is obviously a magnetic and electric somewhat or pranic attraction, and that gives off a light. And of course that builds when you're working out, and that builds if you're having intercourse or whatever, and also builds with genuine feelings like you really loving someone. And so when two individuals get together that are giving off the exact biorhythm that being that is searching for their next vessel is giving off, then it goes into it. Okay, so it's really easy because it's like a magnetic thing, like, and that's why maybe they say, well, don't go into the light, because you're going to go into another reincarnation, but you're also going to go into
Right.
another reincarnation that is calibrated for where you just left off. So
Oh, okay. So then my understanding prior to listening to Robert Morningstar is that you're constantly progressing from lifetime to lifetime.
yes, you are,
Right,
and,
that's
and and this is how it was naturally put together. And of course, today has been about what can hinder that progression, because now we're at a stage in our society where you can be coerced to do things that will break your DNA or take you further down the ladder rather than bring you up the ladder. So, but also you can easily see it as another expansive part of what we're going to experience, because it just teaches us how to have the proper responsibility and make the right choices when it comes to things of a spiritual nature. Like, I'm sure if you're dealing with a completely spiritual environment, you need some type of level of discernment to handle yourself properly, just like you would need if you went to anywhere else that had no laws. Let us think about that. Like, we always think about how free space is, or the ocean, or how free heaven is. Let's say that. Now, in reality, what we're talking about is we're talking about something very similar to the ocean. There's no real limitation to what can come out of the ocean and how many different things and how they look in the ocean. You see what I mean? And so that's why our ocean, if we want to understand just everything that exists in space per se, we can look into all the different entities that live within the ocean and see just how many variations you would get. And so, yeah, the incarnation thing is definitely something that also came up as a major thing to figure out how to govern or change. And this is kind of birthed the tone or birthed the word professional reincarnation. And this is basically, you need a vehicle to reincarnate into, but what if you choose, one, either not to reincarnate, or two, to change what vehicle you're going to reincarnate into? And to gain such things, you would definitely need to know what's called realm dynamics. This means that you've been out of the body before. Before you died, you had actually come out of the body and start learning how to kind of move around the planes, etc. And then, so when you die, and this is, of course, generally the difference between a person that's very adept versus a person that's neophyte when they die, the depth, it's been to that plane before that we're calling death. And, it's just unfortunate that the words that we're using equal such a darker tone, because really it comes a time where we need to be neutral. You see what I mean? Like, we don't need to be thinking in fear right when we're about to make exit. You know what I mean? We need to be calm. And so, there's a lot of dynamics to why there's a lot of fear there. And that's why sometimes when we have to dig really low, we have to get into what's going on with the religions and things like that. But the real knowledge behind this is very simple if you're talking about frequency. It's just there's certain procedures at times that you need to follow to make sure that you can stay in these frequencies. And also look at how the energies continuously build, meaning every full moon, whatever's going on with Earth seems to be getting stronger. So this means that at some point, let's say in 10 years, let's not even talk about like tomorrow or next month or give ourselves dates like 2012. Let's just say in 10 years, we would already have locked into perpetual energy for our existence to even be at hand. And here's another thing. I think that if we were extinct in the future, we would feel it now. I mean, I don't think, do you understand what I'm saying with that?
We would be feeling it now if we were extinct in the future?
Exactly.
No, I don't.
You see how a person has instinct and they know when something is like wrong or something's going to happen and something, right? Okay. Now, just individually, when you search into yourself, not what the media is saying and not what they've cooked up with the 2012, do you feel like you're going into like the end of yourself, or do you feel like you're going into something that's going to reveal more of who you are?
Wow. I would say both.
Well, and that's very interesting, because that's actually what this world, that's the actual, if you wanted to lock into what are benefits of worlds like this, is that you actually learn how to operate a vehicle, but both of them. It's like now the next level, obviously, for you is having the ability to completely have control over your astral body or the one that you see in the dream, while also having your rights and freedom here on the planet that you exist on. Like, we don't have to accept one or another. And that's why I'm glad I took you on the call today, because it's just amazing. Because sometimes when a person is stuck trying to figure out which one or another, in many cases you choose both, because that's how the body is configured if you're doing it the proper way. And then these two combined together, of course, give you a perfect balance. So awesome. Is there anything else that I can assist you with?
Well, yes. You were talking about, you don't have to deal with the physical part of it. All you got to do is just change your frequency.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, what do you think about listening to these different, how does it pronounce? Solfeggio or
solfeggio and tones and frequencies, etc.
The different frequencies. What do you think about listening to a lot of different frequencies? Is that helpful, or is that like useless?
What I found out is that you generally have to. It's like if you're going to use the proper tool. Notice, like, if you're going to take off a tire, you need to use this hexagram, right? But so if you're going to deal with the body, it's almost like your tool has to be, in essence, a triangle, because it's a physical plane. So this means mentally, physically, and spiritually, you have to work on raising the frequency. And generally, you want to do those simultaneously, so that way it raises itself. So let me just walk you through this step by step. What happens with the body is, on a physical level, it's literally like the density or the resistance level of the body and how well it can conduct frequency. And so if you saw it as, like they say, gold is a very good conductor, you can see your body also as how fast you think and how much you can remember and how much you can access in your auric field, et cetera, is based on your pranic charge. Some people see that as electricity because it feels like electricity if someone touches you and they have a high level of it going through them. So what happens...
That's why you have to eat good food.
Well, again, there's more components to this, because the good food is one of them, but it's an environment thing too. And that's why Kundalini in many instances, there was someone calling in, but Kundalini in many instances was not something that a person could write one perspective on the Kundalini or the pranic energies. They had to tell a person from basically all three angles. So food is one of them, but let's just understand the mind, the body, and the soul in their individual stances. What happens if we want to start with the body is, yes, that what you really need is chlorophyll. What happens is there's basic eating principles. Obviously, you don't want to take in too much poisonous plasma or blood or animal flesh. And obviously, you don't want to take in too much fried or overbaked, cooked things, et cetera, too many things with yeast that build worms, et cetera. So now let's talk to the individual who's accomplished that and see if they've flown off to space recently, and you'll find no. So you'll see, and we'll just speak the truth, that just because you go and you eat everything raw now, it doesn't mean that you're going to the highest expansion of your consciousness. It's almost a disappointment, right? Especially after you bought the Vitamix for $1,000. So what happens though is that you got one part. Now the mind has so much, and that's why much of the media and all this is working on the mind, because that's where the controllers have made the most progress. So what it goes with the mind is just a basic principle. You can't give out all of your energy, because everything is really internal. So if there's this external God or external this and external that, now it's coming out. So if you happen to give out more than you're getting in, which would definitely be based on the vividness of whatever you're interfacing with on a spiritual level, meaning that if this spiritual energy, let's say for instance you have a God, is true, then it should be able to come and see you and conversate with you on a regular level, like me and you are talking. And of course, most people will find that doesn't happen in their spiritual experience. And of course,
yeah, but how do you know? Because your mind can play tricks with yourself, and the devil is very keen on this. How do you know that you're talking to the highest God? How do you know that?
That's a good question. That's a question of discernment, harmony. When what's spoken, generally when you're talking to the graduated consciousness, people call this the oversoul. They see it no different than the perfected version of themselves, not as something external. But when you're receiving information from that, it's relative to the situation going on. You'll notice that much of the confusion level of conversation that goes on in the mind is either past tense, because the entities that purport that kind of thing going on in the mind don't see far into the future, or it's very low, because as you know, your body is full of eyes, but the actual energies and where they are is in a lower area of your body. So they're using a lower eye to predict to you or talk to you and say things to you. So generally, you can see it as that. Like you can see where the conversation kind of ties into to those kind of natures, but easily see your body as the actual thermometer or meter itself. You got the bird-like energy up top, and then you got the snake-like energy in the bottom, and all of the entities are standing on themselves to make the complete body. So they are working in harmony. If people want to understand, well, how is this even working if there's so much confusion? Well, no, there is a harmonic level to it, but it's very similar to the body. The body is all working together, but surely the ear is not the heart, and surely the leg is not the head. You see, there's different parts, but they all make up the entire thing, and that's their only agreement. Other than that, they're always trying to exercise more control than the other, right? So basically, if you step out of the body, you'll notice the body is the arm wants to use itself more than the right, left, or they say that the leg wants to step out in front of the other leg. They call that walking. There's, of course, there's inclinations, is how they used to say it. Inclinations coming from the animal parts of our body, the genes, right? And now this is not, again, so much of the biblical story, then it's how things have to be, especially if you can go to India and still find a kid with a tail. So this means that, or with a horn, this means that there's still animal genes inside the composition, not still, but is animal genes inside the composition of every human fleshly body. Now, it also means that that fleshly body is endowed with a certain level of reason. It doesn't mean it's as wise as a soul, but it does mean that it can think the same way that a dog or a cat or any other animal that is basically well-bred can think. So now we start getting to how the body can even talk and be totally separate from the soul, but actually recommend, man, let's go out, or I don't like her. And this is just the body talking now. And sometimes when you look at this whole thing, you see lots of things talking. And that's why some of these belief systems, they'll at least kind of clue you in on being able to still your mind. It's almost still is synonymous with taking it back. So who are you taking it back from? And now in the physical reality, how this will play out, so we don't get too much into the spiritual realm, it's when you have so many people around you and each one's tugging on you for this and tugging on you for that, and you can't even take care of yourself, and then everything's haywire. And then next thing you know, you end up on a full moon and everything is now intensified. So now your energy that was supposed to be used to propel you into the next level of your harvest has been drained away by basically backbiting, snake-acting people. And again, only a metaphor, not necessarily an entity within itself, although I'm sure man's mind can bring anything out of the shadows if he focuses on it long enough, because that's just how we are. But in the reality, it's a way or a trait that means I can never get higher than where I am. And so now we have to see like all of this, this connection. Like what I'm here also to do is I'm here to unify and I'm here to integrate. I'm not here to divide. But in order for people to understand the other components that exist in the reality with them, i.e. the other entities that exist in the reality with them, then they're going to also need to hear their plight. Meaning, why are we all here together anyway if it's all about frequency? That says a lot about where our frequency is. How would our frequency be even adjacent to theirs? Wouldn't we just be way out there? Well, that's where you start getting to the convincing. Like each life, it could be as simple as, like I told you, it's a mind, body, soul thing. So if you never look at it that way, you could miss it. But just on a spiritual level, something can convince you to give up your energy for that entire lifetime. That entire life, you're just looking to something else to give you something. Then then now you got spiritual lifetime, that's down pat. Then they'll switch the cog. Now it's physical. So all life, let's say you're an athlete. You're dedicated to the sport. And nothing else is going on with you beside the sport. Or then next life, the cog spins again and you're a scholar. Now you're studying 10, 15, 20 years, getting super compartmentalized, never realizing all is self. You see what I mean? So also understand with the reincarnations, and this is why some people weren't very fond of it, is it had the way of just taking you back through the same lessons or the portions of the same lessons again so that you can learn them. But here's the trick. You don't live as long as you used to. See, they keep telling that in the book that mankind used to live a lot longer. We used to live a lot longer. We have more years. So if you have 500 years of physical life, come on, you'd be super wise, basically. Imagine what you are now, and then this is not even the beginning. You're still a baby, in real tense. So if you're living 400 or 500 years, of course you're going to realize how to progress your soul and expand it properly. And that's why before 8,500 years ago, humanity was not bad off. Like, that's what people have to understand. Like, they always think my stories are doom and gloom, but I can take you before 8,500 years ago is when we were managing the system properly and we understood what we were doing here. And that's when, and again, there's a point that demarks that when we allow the entry of a foreigner, one that is grafted to the tree. This is even how they write it in the text, grafting to the tree. This means humanity is seen as one big family tree. Humanity is as they have their genus. When something grafts itself to the tree, this means it's assimilable, meaning it can live in your reality, but it doesn't mean that it's exactly like you. Now, of course, through all of this, will completely expand those of us who make it through it, meaning that if someone gets out of this, you'll be an incredible individual. So there's always that. But there's also this other situation going on, like what you see in the third world countries, et cetera, where people are bottoming out. And then if you're supposed to have a soul and you're supposed to feel and you're supposed to have a heart and love, and you see this, but you don't feel anything, does it mean that that soul, heart, love is gone? And that's also where you get this, the idea of the cold-hearted one is that their soul, heart, spirit is basically gone. Now, here's the secret. Serpent is synonymous with flesh. Now, remember I told you that the flesh had its own mind, and it still wasn't as smart as the spirit, but it has its own mind. So what if there's something that's wholly comprised of flesh? It really has no soul as we think of it. It's just nothing but flesh. That's where you get the term the beast. Now, the beast is meant to be the inclinations, meaning the actual inclinations that we have that make us hungry. Now, if I don't feed you, what happens? So now we can get to the root. We can get to the root of whether we're talking about something that really exists or something that they actually made up. Now, of course, when they want to bring a beast into an external reality and make it some type of ravager with horns, we lose the point. But when you take it as even from a child, when the child comes out of the womb, the child gets very aggressive and screams very loud if it doesn't get any of the breast and the milk. So there is if you really want to know what the ancient mysteries are, you only look into life. You don't go looking into a book. And if you happen to look into the book, it has to match up with life. And so that's the doctrine in which before 8,500 years ago, we were going by. If you want to know, well, if these people were so advanced and so great, then where did all this knowledge and application come from? That it came from them actually living and existing. It was hard-coded within them. Then what you see that changes, and you can fly into Samaria and watch how it took place, is you see a new code called Hammurabi. If you take it, it's really Ham the rabbi. That also synonymous which is why Abraham is also from the tribe of Ham. But basically, Ham, the son of Noah, one of the major son of Noah that actually is one of the ones that escaped the flood. So now you're getting into their story, by the way. That individual set itself up as king and basically did the unbelievable. They call this the abomination that set up desolation, basically saying that I am God and the only God. This is recorded in the Gnostic text of Barbello, that basically the entity that the Masons worship, Illuminati worship, is Yalda Baal. It is a real living entity known as Lucifer, the fallen star, etc. And that energy, there was no more place for it in heaven. Now, notice what they're actually saying. They're saying that there's no place for this kind of mentality and this kind of way of being here. We've decided that this place is going to be everything that is not that. And then it says, watch out, earth, he's coming down, or it's coming down to you. See, what they're actually saying, if you can read the riddle, is that this test is coming to you, but it's inside. And it's about your animalistic nature and whether that is actually going to propel you into the higher world, because it's not allowed in the higher worlds because there's no consumption. See, animalistic nature connects with the canine, which connects with the covenant of Sirius. And it has everything to do with consumption, which is why it's called Big Five. Big Five is the pentagram. The pentagram is identified in Chinese I Ching as fire versus wood versus water, etc. So what they're actually saying is that this test comes to each and every single individual each lifetime of whether or not they can actually figure out many of the entities and energies that have been put to test them. And so this is funny because it's almost like just then, if you just can relax for a moment, you see it as a book or just a simulation running, not so much as making it animated as something that's really going to be able to defeat you, because you can't be defeated. If you still understand what's really going on here, you're a mortal soul that needs to understand the full expansion of what a complete tree looks like. So again, a seed, or AKA a star seed, the reason why humans are star seeds, and that's not necessarily a New Age term, is because the elements and chemicals that are used to make humans, not all of them are found on this particular planet. And of course, the reason for that is that things from other planets, i.e. seaman, came from other parts of the constellation and fertilized Earth, and then she began to beget. And that's why it says, the sons of God, seaman, saw that the daughters of man, mammal, man doesn't mean a man. Man is Ma, man is the matriarch. Man is the mammal, man is the flesh. You see what I mean? The flesh, that's why the world was synonymous with being a serpent or Tiamat herself. But it was seen as a sheath or a womb or something that basically envelops light until it develops into another stage, and then it releases it from the womb. Great. Now we have the secret mystery. But what if we got idiots that are putting nets over it? This is where you get the term fishers of men, where when it's time for you to progress, you should have been gone 20,000 lifetimes ago. You're still here repeating the same lessons over and over again that you've already learned. There's nothing left for you to do now but make a mistake. So you've done it right so many times, and then you can't see progress. So what happens basically when you do everything right and it doesn't work? What is responsible for that? And this is also the deeper insight that I'm giving to people, is that it's the planned net. It's the Indra net, meaning that you have to also learn how to circumscribe the net, meaning that everything that how they've reanimated things and termed it different ways, and you may not know that it's in a new package, in a new form. You have to be able to isolate it going on in your life so that you can pass through that net. And so how this would work is that you notice how also what came along with organizations such as any religion, but mainly the New Age movement, was a bunch of God dog madness. Basically, a lot of new entities to worship and to believe in. Now, if you want to know the climax of that, meaning if you took in 33 million gods, then you would get into India or Persia in its heyday. They had 33 million gods. And what human life pretty much consisted of was there was a God for waking up, a God for breakfast, a God for lunch, and our whole life was spent doing that. So we got the t-shirt. Now it's about time for us to realize all of what we've actually learned from all this God knowledge, all the universe, science, and scion, or basically psi means a simulation, not even a real world. So all of this stuff that's been added, we have to see this is the point that you make your move. And this is also what I have to tell people. Don't let this time where you have access to all this knowledge transpire for too long without you getting it. Like what I often do is
How do you make sure you do get it?
You got to make sure that you're able to absorb the information properly. If you see that in one of your vehicles, mind, body, or soul, it won't absorb properly like you know it should absorb by comparing yourself with other absorbents, meaning others that are absorbing, then you immediately go into diagnosing the problem. Throw yourself on the table like a master surgeon and open yourself up. And don't be afraid to definitely ask the question. But remember that this is not something that was ever meant to be delivered in 2 hours, 3 hours worth of conversation. But the facts really are is that we can walk you completely through. All the information is there on the website. Unfortunately, we're working to put it all in the order. But to finish off the conversation, you have to isolate mind, body, or soul. What is the chink in your armor? What is the real Achilles heel for you in space with your ship? Have you crash landed your ship? And then once you identify that, you only need to shoot out an email or query into the Resistance platform, and you'll find the solution for that. So basically what you're doing is you're putting this thing back together. But don't make the mistake in thinking that it's already together. That's, of course, why ego was installed. And this is something to everyone, not directly to you. But ego, or the eagle, was installed because the eagle is also a carrion. See, the problem with this knowledge of the snake and the bird, right, is that many people see that the bird is the good one, and then they missed it. Anytime you emancipate completely through any knowledge system, there is no good one. You'll understand that there's always a fair measure of both of them. But what happens is that if you start to isolate and focus on one thing too much, everything comes out of balance. So here's the story of the bird. Notice how you often see the snake with wings. And this is because in genus, this is something that goes on in your reality, not something that just went on in the Bible or any other spiritual book that may be fictitious at times. But snakes transfer themselves into birds through their evolution. That snakes and even fish and birds are synonymous with each other. So these were meant as metaphors of when one's going through different states of still fleshly life. Because then in the bird-like state, which is known as the Aryan, okay, these are the ones that were in India. These are the ones, they had the blue-faced god because they actually were Nagas that rose themselves up into the godlike position. This is why, again, the whole mystery behind this is that when man raises himself up and says that he is God and the only God, this becomes the greatest issue, because this then means that nobody else has this level of potential, and then it becomes a hindrance for everyone. So when they say they rose up in the wilderness, they told Moses, raise up the staff and the Nehushtan in front of the people so that all of those that were bitten by the serpents can be healed. Okay, so then the brazen rod is raised up, which is, of course, synonymous with the Caduceus rod today, used in medicine for healing. But this same thing is going on with Jesus, because now he's also the Nazarite, Nazi, or a leader of the Sanhedrin. That's what that means. And now they've raised him up on this cross, which of course is earth. They raised him up as a Lord, which means over all of the people that accept him as Lord. And now he's basically controlling things. So do you see that you can walk through it all, but now I'm talking about some of the mental kinks that bleed into spirituality, because this is something that you also have to see. Each of these vehicles, mind, body, and soul, seem to bleed into each other. Sometimes the mind can convince the body to do amazing things. In fact, that's how most athletes push themselves forward, is with their mind. Very few of them have tapped into their spiritual force. So what you have going on is that you just have to make sure, I didn't really catch your name, ma'am, but you do have to make sure that, Julie, is it? Okay, well, you do have to make sure, Julie, that you put that particular perspective of looking at what may be going on. And so some of the pointers, again, just to brush over it one more time, because I don't have a problem with time. Because somebody's like, I gotta go, it's time to get off, but there's no time for me. So it's really just getting you to understand this, because there's at least 100 other listeners that also need to understand it. When you're talking about the frequency of the body, you're looking into your chlorophyll more, because remember, red blood is from the animals. Green blood then, quote unquote, is from the plants. And this is why there's a difference only between the iron and the magnesium, between plasma and chlorophyll, okay? So we know that according to the esoteric laws and what's been going on, that the beings that make it into the heights of the trees, which is a higher level, they are green, or they utilize the green, not the red, because the red are for those that are utilizing the hearth or the lower force of the body, which of course is the genital area.
Right, the green is the heart force.
Exactly. So when you're looking at something every day and you say you eat whatever you eat, when you talk about how much chlorophyll you even take in a head of broccoli, do you see why cows as mammals eat grass all day? It's because it would take all day for you to get enough of that broccoli to actually equal a healthy level of chlorophyll so the body can keep regenerating itself from what? Sunlight. This doesn't mean, of course, worship the sun. This means just accept the obvious. The sun is really what's making the flowers grow. There's an energy coming from the sun higher at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, especially for that 15-minute period in there. But there's an energy that actually makes things form and grow. It also makes your ideas grow, everything. So if you're well watered around that time, then you can expect to grow. The next thing is that the filters. everything is like an eye in the body. Like when I believe personally the body is actually flipped inside out. I can't actually show you what that would look like, but I think we're looking at it, that it's literally an organism that has been turned inside out. And that's the version that we're seeing, is the inside out version, the one we think is so pretty. So what happens is that with these organs, it looks like that they are themselves eyes. And also major constellations. I believe the trick is to tell you that your heart chakra is Venus. It doesn't really work like that. That would just be like to say that all of your genealogy is Moorish, basically. So what you really have going on is there's other constellations in the sky beside Venus, Saturn, and the rest of those guys. And often, many of them appear to be a lot bigger, even from visual standpoint at night, right? So this means that they're only choosing to select Saturn and Mars and Neptune for the ones that they're telling you are the correspondence to your chakras. It's direct hacking. Excuse me for me cutting this off. There's no way for me to do it edgewise, but I just had to do it that way. But that's the noise that we're hearing. But it's only because someone's trying to call in. But again, so what you're really dealing with here is, because I kind of lost my train of thought just for a moment. If you could refresh.
Oh, the color green and the chakras and the different colors, and you're saying that there's...
Oh, okay, yeah, the planets. Like basically the planetary's correspondence to the chakra center, which is very important because you really need to understand the jewel correspondence to the chakra center. This is where the jewel, or which is generally semi-precious stone, or also the tektite, which is just a meteorite, which are often very inexpensive also, can help you in fixing a problem. Now, this is what I have to tell people, because some people are like, well, what are you telling me? I can't really ascend without crystals? That's not what I said. What I said was, if you were still in the baby's body, meaning that the body, let me just turn this on, do not disturb, that'll actually help us. The baby's body is actually calibrated to do everything that you need to do if the baby had the knowledge to do it, okay? So if the body was in that stage, then it would, that's why most of the time babies don't sleep, by the way. But anyway, if in that stage, if your body was still like that, there would be nothing that you needed. So let's get that clear. So when you do damage to the body, then you need certain things to fix the damage that has been caused. You have to find basically the element that is needed to fix the problem. Now, let's say you're from Nebular 33.50, okay? And what happens is that you're now low on a certain mineral, tektite, that you can't get on Earth. So where do you get it? Where can you get the stardust that's needed so that the DNA that corresponds to it can see, once again, an image of itself and perfect itself? Right? Because that's all that's really happening. It just needs to see, what was I like again? Because I'm all screwed up in here. I took impact. And it's, oh, well, here's what you used to look like. Oh, okay, great. Now I'm fixed. And then the ladder keeps correcting itself, okay? Now, where you get it is anything gliding through space will pick it up. Because these molecules are so small, they're just as small as the scent molecules that flow through the air that make you smell whatever it is that's giving off the scent. It was always so amazing to me to see, like they have this electron picture of a garlic, and they show you how many of these scent spores are coming off of it. And they're saying, yeah, that's why you can smell it, because each of these spores make it to even over to the other side of the room, right? So it's the same thing with these elements that are needed. So you can oftentimes pick them up from this. Now, here's another thing, to not keep it too far off, even though you can see the logic within being able to restore certain elements that you're missing. There is a magnetic energy to the crystal. That's how its formulation is able to stay as such. It's bonded. So what happens is that with your chakra center, they're like wheels that are unbalanced. So if you crank one of them up, which some people do in the Namaste meeting, humming the wrong tones and vibrations, and then they open themselves up and the wheel's completely off balance, and then the experience that they actually have scars them to where they stay polarized into that chakra. So what happens is that you have to basically magnetically buffer. This would be like walking around the plane before you take off. You have to magnetically buffer the chakra, which is very similar to a disc or a space shuttle, as what they see a UFO as, before you try to take off with it. So to do that, you need the magnetic force that actually corresponds to that chakra. And to get that magnetic force, you utilize the crystals that correspond with that chakra to you. Because remember, the chakra is a flowing system, so it's like a wheel. So just because you put one crystal down on the bottom area doesn't mean that the essence that is really needed on the top won't get there. But it does also mean is that once you perfect it, because you're studying yourself, not other gods and everyone else, that you're studying yourself, once you perfect it, you'll feel a difference when you actually place the crystal in the right place. But remember, one of the big keys to this, so that it becomes vivid, not something that you can kind of feel and you just don't know whether it's happening or not, and this begins to discourage you, and then energy system's low again, because you're going to need, of course, the encouragement. The vivid experience gives you the encouragement, but realize that you're dealing with something that has to be able to conduct properly. So when you're talking about the body, the trace minerals, even the Ethereum products, these, and also the internal cleansing, cleansing the organs in the proper order. These kind of things help the machine and help the system work itself better. Excuse me, I know some people are freaking out, oh my goodness, not a machine, but let me recant that. It helps the body to actually do what it needs to do in order to be able to carry the charge, because here's what happens. A lot of people are talking about that they want to expand into these higher states of consciousness, and I've been there. But what happens is that if you don't have a really good ground, you can actually lose your mind. It is the real warning against Kundalini and raising energies into centers that are not buffered properly. So remember, the reason why I'm talking about magnetic buffering is because that's generally why when the energy goes up into those chakras, that it's not ready, because the person's higher chakras are also damaged. See, when you see the whole body, you don't actually see the higher chakras as the good ones. You actually see that even the lower chakras are used. That's like the fertilizer, as I said again. So, and then in the higher chakra, the idea is that's what propels the entire body into the next level of existence, so everyone can still do what they're doing now. Meaning, while you see all these people running around acting like they are halfway asleep, they're still a foundation to something major. So they're still, in retrospect, allowing you to actually still stay static in this reality to progress and do something, because it's still a world. That's why it functions like a body. All of us still in this, still going to work, still, on the radio show, giving the people the relief that have to go to work, etc., still functions together. But nobody ever said that we couldn't enhance it. And so that's, of course, the major part of when you jump into the spirituality is you have all of these systems and guidelines that are supposed to be the only ones. But you have new creations. See, this is an ode to why things are not the same. Oh, well, but you can't use the same laws and rules and systems and edicts and decrees for everyone. This is not a cookie cutter. The universe is not doing cookie cutter. So each person is going to need a different level of attention in order to assist them on their expansion. And so that's really what we're here for, because if you find someone that happens to be close enough to you to where you can help them progress, then you found a like partner indeed and a companion to glide throughout space with. Not someone that you have to drag throughout space and they're leached onto you and they don't even want to leave where they are. You see? So there's still a difference in what we talked about today, and that's why we need to know those differences. Here's why. You think deep about yourself because you're a deep person. But what happens is that if you're using the wrong codes, that's why some people, they think very fast about themselves. I'm mad. And they just basically said a couple words and sent out a couple reflections. But in reality, what's really, really here for us is that we have a language that's so much more deeper. And it's like, but why we're using this language, we have to be exact. Because just like I said, as a computer, if you send out the wrong signal, it won't respond. Either you put in the right password and it opens, or it doesn't open. This is how the body and the whole pentagram 5-base nature thing works. Either you complete what they called sometimes the great work, what they called the arcana, even though now all these terms are synonymous with wickedness now. Because the people who took those terms always are doing evil things with the energy. Look, they got a Hedron Collider. Are they feeding homeless children with it? No. Then what use is it? You see what I mean? We can have the Medium Q space modulator down here, but if we can't relieve the world's pressure and perfect its balance, then what does that say about the device itself? And so that's, of course, also where we become adept, because we see it like that. We don't just say, well, they're doing the best they can. That's not what's going on. What's going on is they have a king that's over them that is using hypnotism and illusion and languages and guys like Disney to keep us all behind for multiple lifetimes, and their gig is up. That's actually what's happening. But we have to be willing to jump into the story like that. And that's what I always said, that if you want to know why it's so amazing, wait until you hear the story. But don't expect a simple story, and don't expect it to be straightforward like it's all makes sense, because there's going to be a lot that
Okay, so what is the story?
Well, I mean, I think we just spent half of a day, no, maybe 2 hours explaining a major chunk of it. But the story is everything is in communion. That what you're looking at here on the planet is basically also orgasmic organism. The only things that are tracked, though, are the things that are like somehow. So the only things in between that are the bridges, meaning the bridges in between you liking and preferring one thing over another while still in duality. So what happens is that perpetuator, though, is what we really find as our great challenge, because whatever's perpetuating the duality is what's causing us to not get that rest and not get that point where we fully charge up and say, okay, I'm fully awake. Here's what I need to do. So, that's what you're really dealing with here. It's quite amazing when you think about it, but quite terrifying if it's something that you can't figure out how to get yourself out of.
Well, I truly appreciate all the time that you've given me. I still have so many more questions, but I know that you have other callers that need to ask some questions.
Well, I'm sure they're going to ask the same questions. So if you have something to say, it's better to say it, because realistically, even if one person is listening, and that's what people need to know. Like, even if one person is listening.
Okay, well then, if that's the case, I have a question regarding the devil and the light. And whether one should be focusing on the light if the devil is the god of light. Okay. Or Satan is the...
Well, let's also remember that the spirits, because you can't see them, are also synonymous with ideas. So, and ideas also create energy and power. They're like bottled up energy and power. So the idea of the devil comes in the dualistic plane when there's an idea of a god. So you can also see that 8,500 years ago, God and the devil, which is a two-faced Janus, was introduced to everyone, that there was a good force and a bad force. And then all religions basically function upon that: you do good or you do bad. Not if you do something that is not correct, you're going to get instructions for it and you're going to keep expanding. It's just a pop on the hand, sometimes death, and that's the next level. So let us see that in the beginning, there was no ideas of these gods and devils. Now that there's an idea of that, there's actually eidolons, or thought forms, that have been consecrated, that exist as the embodiments of these ideas, that have become animate. Meaning that if a person starts worshiping the devil, something will indeed appear, and they will feel things, and things will happen, because there are so many individuals that have done that. So now when we're talking about the light, then we're talking about one extreme. If they're not saying full spectrum light, that's why you have to be specific with the codes in the matrix. Full spectrum light, it sends off 7 rays. It sends off all the colors that are necessary to create anything in the matrix. Light, in its in its tense of especially how it's visualized, is just white. Now, that light is often more blinding than it is revealing, and it's also synonymous with Lucifer, the fallen star from Venus. Now, how this works is that if you walk into a room, and let's say the sun is there, or somebody that is actually shining so bright that it's taking everyone's attention away from them, that is the idea of worship, because the only thing that's next for those people to do is to fall down and do that. And that's why the sun became synonymous with the serpent, and the serpent became synonymous with worship. So this idea of displaying your power and your strength over individuals to cower them and to make them see, look, how low they are, is really what we're talking about that entered in 8,500 years ago. So now what you still have is a more, I would say more, but more in the sense of being what the term more means. But we are talking about an advanced being that is advanced with physical reality. So you may be a powerhouse on the spiritual plane, but if you end up on a material plane and then start thinking of yourself as a material person somehow through cunning, then you're on their playing field or their chessboard. And then now all of the physical laws and rules apply to how you're progressing. So what you're dealing with is now you have these brotherhoods and sisterhoods that have put themselves together, that work and weave this system of control together. And it's not just rituals. It's also in business, and money and all these different, country ties and wars and all this kind of stuff actually keeps and perpetuates the system of, quote unquote, the adversary. Now, the reason why these words Satan or and destroyer and devil, which begins with D and all destructive words begin with D, is the way it is because it's just known as the opposition or the opposer. And that's why governments are known to be satanic, because in a sense, they opposed human rights. They oppose life. You see what I mean? So when the terminology is used, they say the whole motif of the Saturn is that when death must be done and we're living on a planet of death, then the energy that's assigned to that is assigned to Saturn. So what happens is that when we only see it that way, then we get, basically, if you didn't get the rest of the story, like there's still another part to the story of Saturn. There's another part to, just as every planet has two sides, there's another part. So, but if they only idolize and glorify one part, and then they have everyone in the reality doing that, then we're dealing with something where when you think of, when you can tie things together, like you tie in the devil, and then you tie in light, and then you can do that in your mind, then that's the action that's been carried out. So this is what you need to, so just so you understand it like this, and this is important because I actually meant to bring this up in this conversation. All of this stuff, especially if it's written, if it's a symbol especially, is in itself inanimate. It can do nothing without you. This is why you always see, like there was a clip from, because I can actually play that clip. There's a clip from the David Bowie movie where the girl is confronting him and it's 13 o'clock on the clock. And he says, look, all you have to do is fear me and I'll serve you. I'll do everything for you. And this is the entire idea of this kind of energy, is because it knows that the trap is within the fear. So it's when you're dealing with, so what I'm saying is that when you're living in a world that can tie these kind of things together for you, there'll probably be no end to that. Meaning that they'll probably say, well, actually this language has to do with the devil. Then they'll say, okay, well, these cars are the devil. And then and then pretty soon what happens? Everything becomes the devil, right? So you see the trick to the entire thing is that if they can create the devil in the beginning, then they can also become the devil in the end. And then when everyone becomes afraid of the devil, and then fear keeps them from leaving, then they will get to exactly where they are today, which is everyone kind of fears to actually approach them on the level that they have to be approached on. Now, notice when I said on the level that they have to be approached on. Now, they're not physical. That's the thing. They deal with spiritual. That's why they carry numbers like 8. They carry numbers like 6. They deal with spiritual planes, the ones that master over the physical or the 5 base planes. So what happens is that you're basically needing to understand the other part of how to operate yourself in order to be able to overcome on that level. Because you're talking about something that is existing within what you would think is your mind, but actually your spirit. And then when that starts to not get solved, meaning the riddle to the devil is that all is self. It's just an idea. All ideas are still subservient to you. They all have to bow down and prostrate if you tell them to, but not other people. So that's what the ancient teachings are only based on how to be Lord and Master and all those grand terms over yourself. It never talked about doing any of that to any external worlds. So because what has been given to you and what has been given to you is what you have to manage. And so it's like you can make children, you can do many different things, and that's what you have to manage. But when you start going into other people's children, when you start taking other people's families and things, now you have to, you open up an entirely different level, an entirely different system. And humanity happens to be living in one of those systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your answers. I'm really very appreciative to your website, and I've gained so much more information that's helping me along my way, and I truly appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and I thank you so much.
Oh, you got it, Julie. Wholeness. Like I said, we're here to do as much as we can to get the message clear. It is a lot to absorb, especially in one day, and then sometimes articulating things properly within a language that is riddled with puns and double words and double bindings, etc.,
Yeah,
it
it's
becomes a little bit
confusing.
difficult. Yeah, and but that also again authenticates things further, because why would you want to confuse yourself? Meaning that why would you, if you were really caring about, like your child, you teach your child a language, you want to teach your child a language that they're going to be able to fully progress with, not a language that's going to trap them and bind them because it doesn't really mean anything. Nothing is solid. And see, that's why they say this is synonymous with law, like legal jargon. What's being called now, I believe it's quantum wording or something like this. But basically, it's when you see why they talk on those writs and those contracts all strange, like to writ, this person hereby claimed as blah 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 in quotations. And there's like this weird, they call that babble. This is also another language. And this is why when you go into a courtroom, there's a lot of jargon that's going on that is not complete. If as a human being that speaks English, it's like, okay, well, that's not a complete sentence. So why are they talking that way? And they're talking that way because they don't talk the way that we do. You see what I mean? Like if you go into one of these palaces in Switzerland, and you get to that guy that's right there, I can guarantee you he's not speaking English. I can guarantee you he will not even use English. Because when you mean what you say, you have to mean what you say when you're moving quick. Remember, quick is not necessarily a part of being good or bad. It's actually a level of knowledge. So what happens is that when you get to the point of meaning what you say, what happens when everything that you say actually manifests? And then what happens if you keep saying the wrong thing? This is the next. Exactly. So this is the next level from when you're moving from the middle level of the spiritual experience all the way into now the depth of meaning. It's your responsibility to what you're saying. You have to know what you're saying. So here's the big expansion for humanity now, especially those that speak English. If you actually know what English means, and you can break it down enough, the mind really does the rest, and it starts canceling out and reconfiguring things that you say when you say them, because now you're having to use the language. So it's just going to help you along until you get to the next level of communication. But notice how people like George Bush speak when he spoke about Iraq. He said, and when we do what we need to do, and we will, which it will be. So there's something that he needs to keep confirming every sentence with an actual double confirmation. And it's because it's a spell, like it needs double confirmation. You see what I mean? So there's this other level, and I don't advise people to go and start studying how spell works, etc. That we're talking about a completely more expanded system in itself. It starts inside. Like you're looking outside of it, it's kind of like the movie, I'm not sure if you've seen it, it's Dr. Parnassus' Imaginarium, but there's one character in there that's actually playing the devil, and he tells the guy that when you figure out what that hocus pocus devil mumble jumble stuff and all the rest of the things mean, you let me know. Meaning that people have created so many different rules and laws, like grab the beak of an owl on the full moon and this and this. And we're acting like our ancestors weren't deeply engaged in this kind of behavior in searching for what? You see, now we get to actually the real nature of who we are, is that we had to have our parents. Meaning we have to have the connection with our ancestral lines or our story of where we exist at, or we look to the sky and we look everywhere else beside where it really is. So that's almost like a trap. If you're let out into an external reality and then you're trying to find yourself, basically the oversoul, in the external reality, you'll never find it. But what if the external reality was wholly comprised of only individual pieces of you? This is why they call him the divisor, because the snake is a part of us. The cow is a part of us. The dog is a part of us. The plant is a part of us. It's all inside of us, inside of our genes, right? But what if someone goes in the DNA and extracts it, incubates it, and then puts it into an external reality, and then puts it right in front of you? And then you say, I like cats, but I don't like cows, and I don't like. So now what you're actually saying is, I like my hand, but I don't like my leg. And I like my butt, but I don't like my eyes. Now, if this seems so foreign, isn't this kind of how people talk when they get in the mirror? They say, oh, I like the way my hair looks, or I like this about myself, my waistline, but I don't like, you see what I mean? So this is what we're really talking about. We're talking about a world of division. We're talking about a world with so many choices. The only thing that they've been trying to do is create more choices. There's more phones, more iPhones, more computers, more games, more this, more. But that just keeps us running in one direction. That's why we know it's either centripetal or centrifugal. There is something about when you're backing out of dimensions, it's almost like having a car. You put it in reverse, it backs up. So there's some basic principles about how to actually change things around, especially if you perceive them going in the wrong direction. But they forgot to tell you that there are layers to you. So you may put one part of yourself in the right direction, and then the other part is still going in the wrong direction. You see what I mean? So this is where it requires you to become like this adept, this lord, this master, or whatever over the body, because you have to be able to say, look, this is going in the wrong direction. And it's also dragging the other ones down, the other ones that we did so much work on, meaning that if you do a lot of work on your mind, but you're letting your body drag you down, a simple strategy is within your mind. You say, look, man, either you got to shape up or you got to go. This is how I talk to myself. And it's a real thing, because guess what? I know that in the end, it's just going to be you. This is how you came into this. So obviously, when it's time to exit and go through the portal, it doesn't matter. I'm sure. Look at this. Notice this. When you come into this world, it's just you, you're solo, right? For that moment, right? But the moment that you go through the canal, you come out on the side, who's all around? Tons of people. It's just about how fast, how much you want to stretch out the radius. You can go thousands, hundreds, millions. You can just keep spinning out the radius, right? So if it's an as above, so below thing, when you go through whatever they're calling death, when you come out on the side, it's going to be fully populated. So it's the same thing. It's just another a reflection of what you was that you were before. So the next level of thinking for humanity is what if I told you that you can actually govern what experience that you went in and out of? And what if I told you that there was something maliciously installed here that wanted to make sure that you kept going into realities that were mastered by these malicious entities, meaning that if you keep coming into realities where all this hanging around is pentagrams and stuff, and then, everything's kind of weird, you can't really get into it, and then for some reason you make sense of it and you find yourself doing it, and then you're trapped, that still doesn't say that it can't happen to you. Now what we're at is actually a level where we're realizing, oh, maybe that's what happened. Maybe I made a wrong turn. Maybe I went left when I should have went right. How can I back out of this thing? And there's that option, because see, the thing is that there's no limitation. That's why the whole riddle within this blaming something for your sins, etc., is actually encased within you. You are the Messiah, because you're the only one that can decide to forgive yourself. And then what happens is if you choose something else to actually say that it's going to be able to expiate you from your sins, right when you're about to die, you really feel more than anything that it hasn't. But even if you're the most staunch, greatest believer, it will happen at that point. So the ancient book said, never wait until that time. No man can die or no woman can die for another. Because here's the thing. This is still a code of death, the code of Amun or Amen. Why are we still thinking about death and it being darkness and scary? Why don't we start talking about investing into a more expansive spiritual existence once we leave here? And why don't we talk about actually going there now so it's not so fictitious? Because why is everyone still acting like there's no astral plane and there's not real spiritual bodies and spirits running around? You see how like only a few people, like I guess Credo Mutwa said, please tell humanity to be considerate of those who've seen the Chittawuli, sir. But basically saying, look, tell humanity that be a little bit considerate. Just because you guys haven't seen anything running around or any other creatures besides yourself, they're doing that on purpose. If they could rewind it and Photoshop it out for you and put one of those Mission Impossible mirrors in front of it, they'll do it. Like they were showing on the Olympics, how there was actually a craft in the sky. And what happened was when they were shooting off all the fireworks, there was too much light for it to, whatever it uses as a cloaking device, to keep itself cloaked. But this is the behavior of these beings. Like, don't think that, oh, yeah, extraterrestrials. No, they would have went all the way to space and still wouldn't have took you. Because they do it now. The guy jumps from the plane from the Red Bull thing, but it will be only him. They don't like how many astronauts are there? You can still count them on a few digits. But the thing is that it's not everyone. And here it is. The potential of it even being you is not realistic. So what do we have to do? We have to look back to when we can make it happen, even if we wanted to. When you go to sleep, if you have the mind power, and many people have generated it before, you are the astronaut. You actually can run out the whole procedure with Buzz there and everything. So there is this part of us that does have the ability to wholly construct environments based on our choosing. But notice how that also we're being locked out of. Let's not, again, play the game here. Our dream world is so sporadic that we can't tell what we're going to dream about from day to day, nor what that dream was inspired by. Some of the dreams are so far off and so crazy, it doesn't even match up to anything that's going on in your life, but it's something that you get an image of. So we know that, but we also know that there's individuals, they're called lucid dreamer, I've been one myself, that can fully control the dream, and you feel more. Meaning that anything that you do in the dream, you can eat something in the dream and it tastes better than it tastes here. How does that work? It's because there's another expanse, Julie. There's another actual dimension, for better lack of words, because a dimension just means a spatial, that you...
Is that what you call a parallel world?
Parallel world, in a sense, well, parallel world kind of loses the concept because, again, the parallel world means the opposite of the dual world. What this is it's like a gate to unlimitless. And the only thing that's happening, though, is in the external reality, we often take the tools that we get here, chairs, cars, etc., and then we bring them into that world and start building that world with those tools. But had we never arrived on Earth or a place where there was such devices called such things, then there would be no dream world in which those things exist. So, since the dream world is heavily connected with the aura, now you actually get the connection to the bridge of the reincarnation of the souls. Reincarnation of the souls come with the mind actually attaching itself to certain integers that it believes as fact and truth. This is generally called a binding. Now, this is not just something as simple as Disney's Cinderella. This has something to do with things even deeper, like cities and states, voting, those religious preferences, things that have a spiritual nature into how they're binding. So this is why they don't want you to accept that there's a spiritual vessel that you're in possession of, because they want to impound that. Because here's the thing, all this is about is energy. So if we can already see the potential of the energy behind some of the elements that are here, but all those elements are actually inside of us, then it is our energy and our potential that is being looked at the most as being the best commodity. And it can never be as such. It can never be different. They can say as much as they want that humans are not really this and humanity is, useless eating, all this crap that they love to say, just a demeanor. He's the wretch. He's the one, the sin, the spot, the stain, the atom, the imperfection. This is what all these words really mean, right? So then when you see that's just belittling, that's just degrading. That's not telling the truth. That's a bigot. That's someone who actually thinks that they're on top, but by their behavior is really lower. So if we accept what they do and start to aspire to become like them, i.e., I want to be Illuminati, I want to be Mason, I want to be, etc., then we inherit all of what they are still running from. Basically, it's like the scapegoat itself, and this just came last night, by the way, is blaming someone else for what you did. It's like throwing them in the way of the karma that's coming to get you. Humanity has become like that for these beings. Listen to what I'm saying. When something has been doing something so wrong, the only agreement that it can come to is a possible sacrifice. And then they've taught this to humanity too. What this is really about is it lies within the deepest religion. It lies within Christianity. It's known as the ram in the thicket. This is when Abraham is there about to sacrifice Isaac, then they say the angel comes down and stops him from sacrificing. That's not what happens in the real book. In the real book, the sacrifice continues to take place, and the ram is symbolic of the planet Jupiter, who is the deck. And that's the same sacrifices that were taking place first, because those were a part of the laws of Hammurabi's code. So you see, there was a whole environment that was completely hostile to us that was brought forth. And this is what they said. They said, if man does these type of things when the tree is green, what will he do when the tree is bare? Meaning that when you see what was going on in the world back then, which is still actually taking place now through the major wars, if we don't do something about this situation, how will these people that are latched a hold of this virus act when it starts to look like we're running out of resources? Meaning the tree becomes bare. Right now, Earth is fruitful. She's giving as much as she can, but it's hard for her. And we see this within women. As my wife said, it's very difficult to see that it takes so much to raise a baby, but you throw them on the battlefield, they'll kill him in one day. As if they don't even respect how much time the mother put into actually bringing one of these beings in the world and how much labor she's gone through, and then not paying her for her labor. This is a slaver. And that's why I said the reptilian or from Orion, I'm not saying all reptilians, but I'm talking about Orion reptilians have been convicted already for being galactic slavers. And it's unfortunate that they have found willing vessels, as George Bush says, willing vessels on Earth that they can just go inside because they need the 3D body to carry out what they need. And who these individuals are definitely the individuals that you see that are purporting death. And again, you get a lot of the, you don't get a racial card, because some people will say, well, is that the white man? Is that the blonde-haired and blue-eyed because he's more susceptible to being cold? No, it's also, actually, no and yes. It's not just the blonde hair and blue-eyed, and it's also not just the black hair and dark-eyed. What it is the person who has the inclination to where when their urges rise up, they cannot control them. And so this is an ode and a testament to all of us. It's not just one particular race. I've seen it across the board. And that's also where you get these two sides volleying, like the Democrat, Demus, the demon, and Republican, repeating the reptile. Okay, so the demons and the reptiles. So now you have these two forces that say, choose me or choose me. Why not choose none of you? You see, that's what the choice really is for us, is that we have to see these forces as exactly what they are. They've only agreed in certain areas to make themselves transparent, or basically not able to be seen. It's like, so it's like, okay, they use the codes and the laws and the rules, but they're still at war with each other internally, but they're not at war about not letting anyone else know the codes, laws, and rules that are not inducted into their societies. You see what I mean? So it's basically like there are rules amongst these thieves. Or is it really Thebes? Because that's, again, the place. It's the Theban priesthood. Theban or Theban means a serpent. So when you go into the etymology, it's riddled everywhere within even the ancient languages. So it doesn't become just a David Icke love affair with some reptilian queen. It actually becomes an entirely different expansion of how the mind is being controlled and kept in the 5 senses. Because remember what we said, it's pent. Serpent, the Sir of 5, the Lord of 5. So 5 senses. Oh, they know everything about 5 senses, but when you ask them about the 6th sense, they get quiet. Right? Look at how the world operates. It knows everything about the 5 senses: taste, hearing, France, the taste. You know, everything else about
So you're talking about, is the 6th sense, is that your intuition?
Yes, anything beyond the 5 sense, but that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that 6th sense, that intuition, that non-linear part of you that is able to go into the expanse, also called the RAN, and actually check and see if there may be something that you need to avoid in the future, or of what you're calling the future. You see what I mean? But really what it is your oversoul outside of this. That's why I said on the other side, you're on the other side, but excuse me, it's getting confusing, but you also have a correspondent to you on the other side. And you can find this riddle within the Bible of why God needs to change his whole story about being inside of the universe. See, if you read the real text of when Yaldabaoth is speaking, he speaks from inside of the universe as if he's limited, or excuse me, it is limited to the universe. See, anytime you speak from the inside of something, that means you've already been swallowed by it. So if you're saying that you're greater than it, then why are you inside of it? You see what I mean? So that's why the story had to switch from the God, quote unquote, not being something that was of earth and something that was here, because that was the original story. See, God was originally synonymous with the serpent. God was Gud, who's Goth. And he's the Gothic serpent from the Druids, which are the ones that carried across the cold of Bohemia, which is, of course, Aleppo in the connection with the Bohemian Grove and the military, et cetera, and all of what goes on in the United States. The Emirs, which are also the bird ones, they carry the falcon as their bird. And these, of course, run into the cults of the Aryans, and also those who speak the Ophanic language, which is, of course, the language of the bird. But then you find that Oph actually still means snake, so showing you the connection. So it just means that there's those who run the higher levels of the political Orion chain hierarchy, club tetragrammaton, I call it. And then there's those that have to carry the lower portion of it. And that's why it's seen as 2 pyramids, or two triangles, excuse me, interlaced or stuck together, just as you see that the Great Pyramid is synonymous with it having that same pyramid on its below. So it's really a diamond. Now, this, of course, the word diamond is synonymous with the word daemon or demon because it actually tells you the secret of when spirit interlaces with spirit, a spiritual communion. So I didn't say flesh interlacing with spirit. Flesh interlacing with spirit is when you interlace a pentagram over a hexagram. The communion of spirit to spirit is the hexagon itself because it's two triangles. A triangle was synonymous with the spirit. So it's a little. So when you're going through this geometry, this is what it means to them. By the way, some people have come to entirely different understandings of it, and this is because there's at least 900 ways to explain anything in a brain that has taken in English. So what happens is at certain times when it comes to your meditation, this doesn't mean don't learn it, don't just go ahead and what they call dumb out. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying understand that demarcation when you go into connecting with Oversoul, you switch it off. And then you also got the t-shirt, meaning that you know the codes to this program because that's the only way you're going to get other individuals out that you say you care about. And this, of course, also becomes why you have fuel and you don't feel discouraged because some people say, oh, this is an immense task, I feel discouraged. You actually look at that there is a way to expand these individuals. Now you're going to need to be the bridge. So the more damage that they take is only because you haven't pushed yourself more to actually give them that solution. Meaning that each of us does contain the solution to one degree or another for the individuals that are around us. But where does it start? It starts with us first. And hence we coined the term innerstand, which actually means, you have to get yourself done first before you start to begin to work on somebody else. But as I said, if you're in a brute force reality, a physical plane, so at times you need to work on it on a physical level first and just clean out the body and then see. Just like the doctor told me, the one who taught me about my body, a naturopathic doctor, he said, I like what you're saying. This was about 4 or 5 years ago. He said, I like what you're saying, but I could tell by your eyes your body is just so toxic. Let's clean out your body and then let's see what you say after that. Because in iridology, of course, you can look in a person's eyes and tell everything. Now, of course, the eye is the gateway to the soul, and this will also show you why you have a certain level of intuition by looking in a person's eyes. You can tell, oh, this person's not somebody I can really trust. So where does that come from? That's because they have an actual writer. This is a term I'm using now. It's kind of funny to me a little bit. But you have a writer that is not able to be trusted. You see, so what happens is the spirit will actually change the appearance of a person. If you can notice the actual slight differences and stop looking at everyone as if they look the same, you will start seeing certain things, characteristics that you can know other individuals carrying. It's the same. It's a strange thing. As if the two individuals are infused with the same soul, but yet you know that there's something that's different about each of them. What is it? It's because many of these energies are large. Like all the terms for the larger whales and behemoths, etc., were synonymous with the gods because the spirits of these entities could fill several humans at one time. And that was known as an orgy or Ogygia, the original name of Egypt, which was basically seen as serpents going into a session with each other like the rites of Bacchus. Really what it is it's Holy Ghost. It's when a lot of people get into a room together and actually start chanting the same vibration until they link up with that biorhythm. And that's why I call it Club Tetragrammaton, because everyone is pretty much on that same language system. And then what they'll see, everyone is still on that same vibratory frequency when they practice in certain churches and temples and mosques, etc. And so when they reach into this higher state of consciousness, oftentimes the language in which that they call tongues is none other than ancient Tamil. And that's why it actually sounds the same, but it's called the language of the serpent. But the Bible tricks everyone and says this is going to be the language that is too deep for Satan to understand. No, that's not what it really means. This is the language that they actually speak. So, get it right. So this is the thing. That's why because remember, the serpent can't speak the same language of man because the serpent doesn't have a voice box. But I was just saying, I think it's fascinating once again if we study the species, because there's also an entirely different story about the amphibian. The amphibian itself was actually created to be the bridge between the mammal and the reptile. So when you're still looking at, before 8,500 years ago, somebody really was attempting to put this thing together so that we all can expand and learn from each other and the beauty of what was going on in the universe. And then Someone decided that they were better than all the rest of us. You see, that's all you're really dealing with here. It's not a complex component to really divine, but you're talking about the raising up of something else over the other. But the amphibian, again, as a bridge, you'll see that there's a heavy connection with the amphibian and also the Mesoamerican tribes. Also put under the terms generally as Guanacaste, the Guava, Guanabana, all the different Gua that you see in languages is the text of the Guana, or Guanacaste means the Guana castle. So while there's still all this focus on maybe one particular entity, whether it be Anubis or the dog or the Anunnaki as they call it, all of these energies are just wrestling for attention, just as a star in Hollywood would actually wrestle for more attention to keep more fans, or things to keep it cool while it's hot. You see what I mean? So all of the wording and the riddle is put together. It can be put together by the individual now. I can't say that our ancestors within the last 300 or 400 years, maybe even 1,000, 2,000, and it looks like maybe 8,500 years have not had an opportunity to do this. So if you're looking for whatever 2012 was supposed to bring and why they call it the end, it's because it's the end of their foolishness. And their foolishness has really been going on for 8,500 years. I just don't, it's baffling, especially only living at 72 years now, because we're counting using their time system. Chronos is the god of time. Thus, one can dictate when it's one day and when it's another day, and then when things are going faster and when things are going slower. Have you not noticed that the days these days go by a lot faster than the ones from the old days? When you used to go out.
I was getting older.
Exactly, but well, no, that's not what it is. It's things are speeding up because everyone wants to go faster. The time where we all get, we get things that go faster. Look at it. Everything's about faster. We want a faster computer. We want a faster car. We want a faster way of traveling. So that's just the mode of how life is. But what if something wants to keep you from going fast? And that's what we're talking about. Then what happens? You get tired. We're not supposed to be asleep. As I said on the other show, does the sun sleep? So surely the soul doesn't sleep. So why is the soul sleep? It's not the soul that sleep, it's the body. Watch this. So just because like right now the soul is it's up, it's awake, it's listening. You're up, it's awake, right? So when you go to sleep, it doesn't go to sleep, it goes to the dream world. It never sleeps. But when you're flesh identified more, which is just as a simple check, it's not saying anything bad about anyone, but this is how you check it. If you're flesh identified, then you feel sleepy too. And that's of course the drawback of when you're in actual fleshly realities and it's still an illusion, only illusion because they're saying that someone is over you. I have to clarify that. It's an illusion because the law says that there's someone over you. There's no one over you. You see, in reality, in the universe, great expanse, all it is, no laws, no rules, no one's over you. That's how it works. But in a matrix, there is someone over you. So thus has been put forth a law that's not true, a foundation of lies. So now that's the lies are big. And this is why when you go into, like I said, you go into these courtrooms and things of that nature, everyone is all initiated into one club. And it's because it's basically the club of liars. They are trapping humans, like even with, like I said, a radar jammer. You're flying down the street, you're speeding. Next thing you know, you're in one of their courtrooms. Now you're signing their papers. Now they're telling you got to pay them now. See, I'm not telling people to be anarchists and not to do it. I'm just telling them to look at what is actually happening. What happens if their rules and things expand and they want more? And the reason why I started to look deeply into especially these type of societies who are doing this was from a recent story that I just discovered about how they took Hawaii. And that basically what has been occurring is that the postmaster is really the military and the rest of what you see as far as government organizations, et cetera, because it's been since even before the Pony Express that they've been controlling the highways and the byways. So what's happening is that where Hawaii is actually positioned is in the place where all ships that were going across the Pacific Channel had to stop at Hawaii in order to refuel for coal. And of course, Hawaii's got plenty of coal because they got plenty of volcanoes. So King Kamehameha and the rest of that royal line, which is another king or prince or whatever on the earth that we don't really have much data on where they came from and who they really are. But once they realized that this stronghold was in place, then this group of secret societies devised a way to actually steal Hawaii. And how they did that was, once incorporating Hawaii as a state, which they thought that that was a privilege, they actually started passing laws that really meant they were going to take 10 years to go through. That way, once somebody was dead, and that, laws and other things could be passed. But basically that law states that if you're off your land, or the heir of the land is off the land for a certain amount of time, then that land is up for grabs. So imagine, this is craziness, but this is the law. You see, this is how the law can be used to work for an individual, and they can pin and bind other human souls into their mess. So, right? So check this out. So then they take land, they take a huge chunk of the land, which clearly shows that they were, hey, this land is ours. And then so immediately a lawsuit, since they're now a part of the state of the United States, was brought against these people who took this land that were part of, multiple folds of organizations, etc. But when the case was about to be heard, the judge in the court said, this is not my jurisdiction. This is not my case. I can't. This is a state court. You're looking to do something else. We can't handle that here. And they did it all the way up until the Supreme Court, until the Supreme Court said the same thing, because the actual treaty in which that was written, that was modified and ratified, says that such things could be done. And now Hawaii no longer belongs to the Hawaiians. It belongs to the Masons. So you see that this is really not a game, because when you can actually take someone's land, that you can actually still prove that they were the original people on that land, how long is it until they start to come and take other kind of land? I'm not talking about physical land, because I'm not into the flesh. When are they going to start taking souls? And then I realized, Julie, that they've already been doing it. And this is where the religions and all these things come in, is that we keep getting our souls hijacked, basically, every lifetime, dealing with these laws, these rules, these creeds, these edicts and stuff that we're struggling to learn. And somebody needs to come to us and let us know how to shut it off. Meaning that once we start to try to find out the knowledge, that's why you notice in the beginning they talk about it's the tree of good and evil. It's the knowledge of the tree of knowledge, okay? So once in eating this tree, this means that you now have to get to the bottom of things before you feel that you've gotten satiated and full, right? Like, let's say, for instance, you eat from a tree, but you don't get enough. You seem to want more. So this means that whatever you're eating is actually causing you to continuously consume it. Knowledge is like this. The more you learn, the more you feel like you need to know, right? So that's, of course, where all the language and things comes in at, because if it's language that's trying to instruct you on what you should and should not be doing, then, it becomes an entirely different component for you to learn. What you have to do is you have to really work with more. Actually, you don't have to do anything. What you can get to do is that you can go inside and actually start looking at how the order of life is from the time that your conception into this planet, and how you progress. Your mother, her name, the hospital you've been in, all these different things that show you what your progress really through the ocean was. Because you're just only living out a physical version of the same thing, but you just need to understand what things mean. And so hopefully that really, this conversation gives you more clarity on getting closer to that. I think that that's something that we're all really working towards. It's a good thing that we can actually do that together. But it is a major thing. Like, we've been cracking through a lot of what's going on because we want to know. I don't see it as right that we can't even tell our children, the child says, where's God? Can you take me to God? No, I can't. Well, I thought you said he was our father. You see, it doesn't, like, they're going to start asking those questions. Like, remember, just because the populace doesn't ask those questions, it doesn't mean that the children won't not only try to ask us those questions, but also just ask themselves if they can't get an answer from the reality. And I'm one of those children. I kept asking the question about, but what about this? Even when I got into a level of being 24, 25, and even learning and adhering to Gnosticism, still asking the question, like, well, why? What is this? So that's going to get us to, the answers. And if something is uncomfortable with giving us the answers, that's the first set of discernment that tells us maybe something's not right.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you got it. So that's it.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, wholeness. All right, everyone. So that's going to do it for today's show. We went for about 3 hours. I guess it was a special show. We got off to a slightly slow start, but looks like towards the end, we definitely were able to get some information out, especially about, expansion, because it's a big thing. Like, I really want to see everyone be able to enjoy the feeling of clarity within inside themselves, and knowing exactly who they are and what they came to do. And then also being able to identify and check any kind of energies or entities that are actually approaching them, asking for or looking for some type of agreement or something that you can help them with. Now, here's the thing. If someone, like, let's say for your family, says, hey, can you help me do something? It doesn't mean that you decide that you're not going to help them and do anything because you feel like that they're a bad spirit. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about abusing the knowledge. What we're saying is that understanding each move that you make and actually being fully conscious in the moves that you make, so that way these other individuals can see that maturity coming from you and can start also making the same decisions themselves with how they carry on. So you don't let people overstep their boundaries with you, but you also don't close yourself up and act like you're going to just, dig yourself into a hole and not see what you can do about this situation that's taking place here on Earth. Because, hey, we're in this. It's going on. If you want to be in the illusion, you can just drone out real quick and be like, that's just what's life. No, man, this is more than life. It's more than one word. Wholeness.